And welcome to 580 Sports Talk. Brendan Dworzinski, Dan Lucero here with you for the next 3 hours. Appreciate you stopping by on this Wednesday. A lot to get to on the show today. We will recap K-State's loss to Iowa State and why I wouldn't be too concerned about it if I was the Wildcats. No, that's not the fun, hot take to bring to the table after a big night of Big 12 basketball. But I wouldn't feel too bad about that game if you're K-State. We'll talk about why coming up here in just a minute. Plus, handicapping the Big 12 race. Feels like a 6-team race right now. And that's because there are 6 teams within one game of first place in the league. K-State, Iowa State, TCU, Texas, Baylor, Kansas. 6 teams within one game with, after tonight, 10 games to go in the league. That is going to be a fun race to the finish. We'll talk about the race in the Big 12 coming up in just a few moments. Also this hour, we will play our weekly round of One Gotta Go, and Joe Otting, the standout senior for Hayden basketball, as well as Hayden football, future Notre Dame Fighting Irish offensive lineman. He will join us. He is our Wendy's High School Athlete of the Week. That's coming up again later on this hour. Later on in the show today, we've got some Chiefs-Bengals preview to get to. We're going to get to some offensive props. What does Vegas think about passing yards for the quarterbacks? What about rushing yards in this game? It was a huge factor the first time these two teams played. Does Vegas see that the same way this time around? And we'll look at some other props as well. Plus, we'll get you the latest on Patrick Mahomes. You heard from him earlier today on Mic'd Up, so we'll get to some of the things he had to say earlier on. Tim Fitzgerald is going to join us bottom of the 4 o'clock hour for our Azure Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up. We've got some Royals to get to. We are less than a month from pitchers and catchers reporting, and we're less than a month from position players reporting as well.
Yeah, we are.
So we'll do a little fill in the blank with the Royals. Who is going to start for them this year? What is the opening day lineup going to look like? Plus, we didn't get to this when we were going through the Royals rumor mill the other day. Maybe a little movement on the Zach Greinke front? Sounds like the Royals want him back. So we'll talk about everything Kansas City Royals coming up later on in the show today. We've got What Is Wrong With You. As I mentioned, we'll play One Gotta Go this hour. We've got our headlines. It's all coming up on this edition of 580 Sports Talk. You are welcome to be a part of the show on the Big O Tires text line. 785-272-9429 is the text line number. And you can hop into the YouTube comment section as well. Sports on 580 WIBW is our YouTube channel. Appreciate everybody who's listening in on 580 WIBW, online at 580WIBW.com, or watching on YouTube as well. Sports on 580 WIBW. By the way, go subscribe to the YouTube if you haven't yet. All right, let's get into it. Last night, Kansas State, late tip-off in Ames. They lose to Iowa State 82-76. I'm not worried about this game for K-State because I think the reason why they lost, or at least one of the reasons why they lost, somewhat out of character. Now, the turnovers and the points off turnovers, that was the number one issue in the game. K-State only gave the ball away once more than TCU did, 14 versus 13. Points off turnovers. This was the difference. Absolutely the difference. Iowa State. Iowa State had 25 points off 14 K-State turnovers. You're looking at nearly 2 points off each turnover. K-State turned TCU over 13 times, only got 13 points out of it. Point per possession off of turnovers. That's not an awful mark for K-State, although you would like to be able to take a little bit more than 1 point off of each turnover. Iowa State scoring essentially a field goal every single time K-State gave the ball away. That was the difference in the game. Things like live ball turnovers, those are costly. Those are costlier than dead ball turnovers, by far. That was the biggest number one difference in the game, and that is something that I think is a long-term concern for this K-State team, because the games in which they've lost this year in Big 12 play, Iowa State struggled with turnovers and the points given up off those turnovers. TCU, that game was decided because K-State just could not control the ball. They just kept giving it away to the Horned Frogs. That is a problem. Jerome Tang even acknowledged that during his press conference after the game. The other reason, though, K-State, not really good at the free throw line. K-State's the best free throw shooting team in the Big 12. And it's 17-25 last night. Not especially good. You make a couple more of those, it entirely changes the game. Hell, you even make one more of those at one point. It's a 3-point game late instead of 4. That changes the equation the entire final 5 minutes of the game, possibly. So that's the one that I'm less concerned about because it's a really good free throw shooting team. They have proven within the last week plus that they are good in crunch time, usually at the free throw line. Look at the KU game as an example of that. So I'm not super worried in that regard. I am worried about the turnovers, but thankfully that at least does not come up too often. 2 bad turnover games and points allowed off turnover games in 8. Not terrible, but I think to me, that's still among the, in terms of execution, in terms of production, that's still probably the number one thing I think K-State needs to get figured out here.
And see, I'm not even worried about that. I mean, I think 14 turnovers against Iowa State's pretty good. I mean, maybe it's a few too many per possession because the pace of the game wasn't very quick, and Iowa State was able to dictate the tempo and the terms of the game in the second half a little better than they were in the first half. But if you'd told me beforehand K-State turns the ball over only 14 times, I would have said, yeah, they're going to have a puncher's chance to win and to put up a number that maybe Iowa State can't match on offense. And in fact, Kansas State outscored, I think, every Iowa State opponent to this point in Big 12 play by scoring 76 points last night. They were 52% from the field, 9 of 16 from behind the arc. Another good shooting night for Ish Massoud, 4 out of 5 from distance. The free throws, yeah, they missed 8, and they, typically are a much better shooting team than 68%. They make half of the ones they missed, and that was literally right there, 4 points. That was literally the difference in the game. Here's the thing that stands out to me the most for Kansas State coming out of this game. We have talked on this show the difference between big man and tall man. And K-State's got tall man, but they don't really have big man. Like Bebe Igiola is about the closest thing they have to big man, but even he's more tall man than big man. Like, you can be tall without being big. You can also be big without being tall. But K-State's got tall man, and they don't have big man. And Iowa State doesn't really have big man, but Oshuni is big man. And Robert Jones, 13 minutes off the bench, he's big man. And K-State's tall man, Naquan Tomlin, Bebe Igiola, Ish Massoud, combined to have as many rebounds last night as the dynamic duo of Brendan Wrzinski and Dan Lucero watching the game on their couch. Your 3 posts did not have a rebound. Not one. Not even by accident.
That's downright
like
late stage Weber-like.
Like a ball didn't roll to their feet and they picked it up. A ball didn't hit them in the chest and stick. No rebounds in 32 minutes for Naquan Tomlin. No rebounds in 13 minutes for Bebe. No rebounds in 27 minutes for Ish Massoud. K-State was -8 on the boards, and they were only -3 when it came to total offensive rebounds. They only gave up 9 offensive rebounds for Iowa State. But Iowa State turned those 9 offensive rebounds into 17 points. And K-State turned their 6 offensive rebounds into 7 points. So you're right about the turnovers. Like, the extra opportunities, Iowa State was much more ruthless on their extra opportunities in that department than K-State was. But that also holds for second chance points as well. That Iowa State, again, almost 2 points per offensive rebound. K-State, 1 point per offensive rebound. And that's a big deal. That was a separator last night. And it's part of the reason, that Iowa State, because they're getting turnovers usually lead to easier shots. Second chance points, the easiest time to hit a 3-pointer is when the defense is disorganized after you grab an offensive rebound. And that was the only shot Caleb Grill hit all last night, was a big 3 late in the second half on a second chance, on an offensive rebound that led to a wide open 3. Or offensive rebounds oftentimes lead to putbacks, high percentage shots. And that's how Iowa State, who I still don't think is a great offensive team, ends up shooting 57% from the field. That was the difference to me. And that's the thing that moving forward, Kansas State has to get a little bit tougher in the painted area. They don't have great rim protection, and they're not going to acquire a rim protector anytime soon. Maybe David Gasson is a big fix for this once he's back and healthy and more able to give them minutes in a game like this and a matchup like this. But they have got to be tougher in the painted area. They've got to be better on the glass. That almost cost them against Oklahoma State. It cost them a little bit against TCU. They got out-hustled in that department. It cost them last night.
Trying to go through the stat broadcast numbers here. I believe that a majority of those 14 turnovers, and I can't get an exact stat for you, but I believe a majority, slim majority, of those were live ball turnovers by K-State. And that's what runouts and struggling to set up your own defense and getting sped up. That's what that can lead to. So again, it's the type of turnovers. It's not necessarily the raw number of turnovers. And, if you had half of the balls that were just intercepted or stolen away, if those are travels, double dribbles, carries out of bounds instead, well, you can go set up your defense on the other end. You might not end up in that same situation. So it's about the context of it more than anything. And I wouldn't say, again, that I'm worried about it necessarily, because again, the one game TCU they were balling out, and then this game last night, it was close despite struggling with those points allowed off of turnovers, despite having a very mediocre day at the free throw line. What was the percentage even? 17 to 25, 68%. Thank you. So be it. That stuff happens sometimes. Hard league. You lost by 4 points on the road. It was effectively a one possession game at the very end of the game.
Yeah. And
it happens sometimes.
And now you have 2 losses in Big 12 play. You know who else does? Everybody has at least 2 losses in Big 12 play. It's a hard league. If you thought they were going to go 17-1 in the Big 12, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. That was not going to happen. The league champion here is probably going to lose 4, maybe even 5 Big 12 games. And this was a tough one. And it was one that I think registers as frustrating, because even with the difficulty at the free throw line, even with the points off turnover disparity, even with the rebounding and the second chance point disparity, this was a game Kansas State could have won if a couple of possessions here and there go a little bit differently. And there were just a couple of decisions throughout the game on certain possessions, whether offense or defense, like the decision for Marquise Noel to pull up when he's got to step on a guy after a steal, to pull up and shoot a 3 at the top of the key. And I know that's in the first half, and that feels like a small play, but you'd rather have 2 points than no points, which is what he ended up with there.
Absolutely.
And actually, it ended up being a long 2. They ended up calling it a long 2 because he had his toe on the tape. So it registered in the box score as a long 2 that he pulled up for on a break in the first half. Bad foul, 90 feet from the basket by, I want to say it was Cam Carter, late in the game when Iowa State's already in the double bonus. It's a 3-point game. You miss a shot and then you foul 90 feet from the basket. Just a couple of things that just weren't as sharp or as disciplined as Kansas State has shown that they can be so far in Big 12 play. And if any one of those 2 things are different, you feel like Kansas State might have won and might have been able to enjoy margin a little bit at the end. But all of this stuff didn't go Kansas State's way. And in some ways, I think that's a little bit encouraging that all of this stuff didn't go your way. And you still, against the number 12 team in the country on the road in a notoriously tough environment, lost by all of 4 points. I think that just right there says something, again, positive about where Kansas State is and kind of where they stand in the hierarchy in the Big 12.
I mean, that's the same argument we made after K-State beat KU the other day, right? Is that, look, Kansas did not shoot the ball well at all. They had, they got in a ton of foul trouble, and all these other things went south, and still on the road, they only lost by 1 point. Now, granted, we have seen other things pop up that have been problematic for Kansas since that point, but again, given the context of the situation, I would not be worried about this at all if I'm K-State. But as we mentioned at the top and mentioned again, you did just a moment ago, the race for the Big 12 has 6 teams all within 1 game right now. 3 teams are tied at 6-2. You got another 3 who are 5-3 right now. How many of those 6 teams, and again, it's K-State, Iowa State, TCU, Kansas, Baylor, and Texas. Of those 6 teams, are all 6 of them legitimate threats to win the league right now?
Yeah, I think so. Any one of those could win the league or win a piece of the league, and it wouldn't surprise me one bit. If I'm skeptical about any of them, it's probably, I wonder about Iowa State's depth and still their scoring. Like Jaron Holmes and Gabe Kalsher are not going to combine to go 15 of 22 from the field every night with a lot of tough 2s. Like Jaron Holmes made some tough long 2s.
Yep.
Kalsher made a difficult long 2 late in that ball game. Taman Lipsey going 5 for 10 from the field. That was found money for Iowa State too.
Yep.
And you know how unexpected that was, because in the late stages of that game, K-State wasn't even guarding him.
No.
early in the game, they weren't guarding Jaron Holmes. They let Jaron Holmes shoot, or it was Watson actually that they let shoot from behind the arc twice, and he shot 2 air balls. But like Jaron Holmes was a guy that I think they were much more concerned about Kalsher and Grill from behind the arc, and Jaron Holmes knocked down 2 of his 3-3-pointers. So that was an uncharacteristic offensive performance from them. And so I don't know that they're as good offensively as the other teams in the discussion. And I still wonder what it's going to look like for Texas in the real meat grinder games with Rodney Terry as the head coach. Like, that's a factor. And I think it's going to be a factor in the race. So Texas and Iowa State are the 2 teams that would maybe surprise me the most if it ended up being them at the top of the Big 12 heap at the end.
Yep.
But that's just like I'm saying, they're the ugliest of the supermodels, essentially. All 6 teams, I think, have real defined strengths, and they play you really tough at home and shouldn't lose a lot of home games moving forward. And this feels like a split title year to me. This feels like 2, maybe 3 teams have a hand on the brass ring at the end of things.
I think it is important to note for Texas, to back up your point, and I don't know if this is necessarily a point about Rodney Terry or just this Texas team in general. They've got 1 win in Big 12 play. They are 6-2. They've got 1 win in conference play against a team in the top half of the league. They have wins over Oklahoma State twice, Oklahoma, Texas Tech, West Virginia, and they beat TCU by 4 at home. They lost to Kansas State. They lost to Iowa State at home and on the road, respectively. Now, all those teams are tough. Like West Virginia would be a top 4 team in plenty of leagues in the country, easily. Texas Tech, I think, would be too. But that means they've got one of the hardest schedules imaginable down the stretch. They've still got to play Kansas twice. They have to go to Manhattan. They have to play Baylor twice still down the stretch. They have to take on TCU again on the road in Fort Worth, that on the first day of March. Oh, by the way, they also have the toughest matchup, or maybe second toughest matchup of the Big 12 SEC Challenge. Not that that matters for the race, but Tennessee, not an easy team to play against. A team that will wear you down and bully you. That is a really difficult schedule for Texas down the stretch. That, to me, puts them behind the 8 ball more than anyone. I mean, you can lose any game in the league to anyone at any time, and no one would be that surprised, except maybe a loss to Texas Tech at this point. But Texas having to face Baylor twice, KU twice, another game with K-State and another game with TCU, plus another game with Iowa State, that is a gruesome schedule the rest of the way. That's why, honestly, for KU, you kind of benefit from having this stretch right now because, again, there's no easy games, but you would rather not be limping into the Big 12 and NCAA tournaments. If you can get a couple wins there and stack them up at the end of the year, you're a little bit more comfortable. I'm with you, though. I think that it's Texas and the other one's Iowa State. Abby asked me last night at the end of the game if I thought Iowa State was for real good. And I said, yeah, I think they are legitimately a top 15, maybe top 10 team in the country. I just don't know that they're going to go all that far in March this year because okay, Gabe Kalsher gets shut down. What happens to the offense? You trust Caleb Grill? You trust Jaron Holmes? You trust Oshuniyi to have a huge game in the tournament? Not really.
Holmes has played really well in Big 12 play. He might be that guy that really emerges and makes Iowa State a better offensive team down the stretch. That's the guy to keep an eye on for them. And they got to get Grill healthy because he was a kind of a shell of himself last night. He was still kind of flopping around and trying to draw fouls, but his heart wasn't in it. He just physically wasn't in it. It was a tough game for him, but he's got to get healthy. A couple of thoughts worth, I think, touching on from the Big O Tires text line and from the YouTube comments as well. Vance asks, the Cats only had 13 assists last night. They averaged almost 18 a game. Could that have been a contributing factor? I think 13 assists on 25 made baskets is still a pretty good ratio. There was a little bit more of, I don't want to call it ISO ball, but there may be a little bit more of an element of that. But some of that's a credit to Iowa State, the way they play passing lanes, and they kind of want you to put it on the floor and drive into the trees. And the other thing too, when you look at assists, is sometimes there's some home cooking on that number, and you don't get all your assists really accounted for. So I wouldn't I wouldn't be too concerned about that number last night or be all that worried that that's an indicator that Kansas State didn't have a good offensive night. I mean, they still shot 52%. They were taking good shots for most of the night.
It's honestly incredible with those two teams defensively, especially with Iowa State. Both teams shot 52% or better for the game. Both teams shot 55% or better in the second half.
Yes. The Vegas total for this game was 135.5. Ask me how I know. In fact, don't. It ended up blowing past 156, the final number. Both teams played at a really high level offensively. Another question from the Big O Tires text line from our pal in the 402 asking if K-State can still be a 1 seed. Certainly that's still in play for Kansas State, even with the loss last night. That's not a bad loss. On the road against the top 12 ranked team in the country, that's not a bad loss. It's not like they went to, Morgantown and lost by 25.
No, that loss in a vacuum frankly means nothing for seeding. Not one thing, because that's not going to affect your net ranking any. That's not going to affect how you look from Ken Pom or Tracer or any of those other numbers. Bart Torvik, all the different places that have the advanced number. That game in terms of NCAA tournament stuff does not change anything. Not one bit. By the way, speaking of, do you know where Kansas State currently is in the net?
I do not.
They are currently 17th in the country in the net rankings. KU is 10th, Iowa State 9th, Texas 8th. Texas is the highest team in the Big 12 in that regard. Let's see, TCU is 13th, Baylor's 14th. That's even crazier than the AP poll and the Ken Pom rankings. K-State or the Big 12 looks even better there. I do have a belief, though, and I was just throwing out the different places and different rankings and why that loss isn't going to mean a whole lot. Because you're going to lose games to the Big 12, too. I mean, it just happens. You bake in, okay, yeah, you're going to lose a couple games to good teams.
Yeah.
You really don't need to look at the net rankings until the end of the year because you might beat a team that was a quad 1, but because they lost that matchup, it actually becomes a worse win for you because by losing, they're now quad 2. Like, it's a ridiculous system that really only makes an impact at the end of the year. So it's something worth keeping tabs on. I had someone ask me about that the other day, but don't fret it too much. Every Big 12 team is going to end up in the top 20 in the country in quad 1 wins at the end of the season. Again, except Texas Tech, because they probably just won't win enough games.
Yeah. Now, I think again, if you take anything away from last night, got to value the basketball, have smarter offensive possessions, maybe in some certain spots. Certainly got to rebound better. We had another texter in the Big O Tires text line from the 785 point that out that, again, it is unfathomable that your 3-post guys do not get a rebound. Like that is a mind-blowing statistic that your tall guys don't get a board even by accident. But there's nothing really to panic about. There's nothing last night that I felt like, oh man, Iowa State exposed a fatal flaw for Kansas State. Like, we know Kansas State's rim protection isn't spectacular. We know that they don't have like the big guy, the physical size to be a great matchup against another team's version of Oshuni or whoever it might be. But I really don't believe beyond that we saw anything last night that's an exposure of, oh boy, this is a house of cards. It's about to come tumbling down for Jerome Tang and company. No, it was a tough loss on the road to a good team. And you run into those in the course of your college basketball season. They'll have a chance to regroup, learn from it. They've got Florida, a team coming in who statistically, probably their closest parallel in the Big 12 is Oklahoma State. Not a very good offensive team, but a really tough defensive team. They're 41st in the Ken Pom with a offense that's out of the top 100, but a defense that's in the top 20, top 15, in fact, in the country. So got to regroup, got to play a little bit better, a little bit more physically, a little bit more careful, valuing the ball on offense. But a win on Saturday in the Big 12 SEC Challenge would get you right back on track.
I'm going to give you a very funny statistic. Then we have to get to a break. Last night, Ish Massoud did not have a rebound in 27 minutes. Shockingly, that is not the most minutes he's played in a game without a rebound in his Kansas State career.
No, I believe that. I watched him last year.
January 4th, 2022, home versus Texas. Ish Massoud had 9 points on 2 of 9 shooting with 0 rebounds in 35 minutes. He played 78, or what would that be? 7/8 of the game and did not have a rebound.
To be fair to
he's 6'8",
the 2022 version of Ish Massoud, that was not the role he was asked to play. He was playing the 3 for Bruce Weber last year. He's a little bit more of a stretch 4 now.
Yeah.
In this particular lineup. So he is being asked to guard down low and also chip in on the rebounding side in a way that perhaps he wasn't on January 4th, 2022, which makes it a little more galling. But he also hit 4 big threes last night. They wouldn't have been in that game without his offensive presence. He continues to be a valuable and improved piece for this Kansas State team. But, man, him and Bebe and Tomlin all got to do some soul searching after that game. They all had to be looking at each other like, how did none of us get a rebound, man?
We've got to take a break. We've got plenty more to get to here today on 580 Sports Talk, including this hour. We've got some One Gotta Go coming up next, and our Wendy's High School Athlete of the Week, Joe Otting, coming up later on this hour. It's all coming up here on 580 Sports Talk. Go on 580 Sports Talk with Brendan and Dan on this January 25th. Happy Wednesday to everybody. All right, my one got to go. We're going with wing flavors today.
Okay.
I'm going to give you 4. One's got to go. It's off your menu. We're going to go with the classic buffalo. So not, especially hot, not especially mild, but just your classic buffalo sauce. We're going to go with your Asian zing. So there's a couple different places do different variations on that, but, more, East Asian spices on it. Garlic Parmesan or lemon pepper. One's got to go.
Asian zing. I have to think too hard about that one. Buffalo's the all-time classic. You can get that anywhere, and it's going to be good. I'm a big fan of the garlic parm wings. That's a fairly recently acquired taste.
Mm-hmm.
And then, there's just something pleasing about the lemon pepper, either as a sauce or a dry rub. Something just really pleasing about that particular wing. So, Asian zing's got to go for me.
Are there any of the, not necessarily hotter, but any of the spicier flavors you really do like? Like a Caribbean jerk, if you will?
Yeah, that doesn't really do it for me. Like a Cajun
Yeah.
Like the Wingstop has a Cajun rub that is delightful. Might be my favorite wing, period. I haven't really found a place that can duplicate it the way that I've had it at Wingstop. But yeah, I like to keep it pretty traditional when I order wings. I get buffalo. Sometimes if there's a good garlic parm wing, maybe I'll give it a shot. But I am fairly traditional with my wing choices generally.
I like garlic parm. I was telling you this the other day. I went somewhere where, I mean, it was like they just dipped them in a vat and left them there and scooped it out with a big net. It was like, here's an entire plate of garlic parm with some chicken just like tossed into it. Too much. Little overkill there. But I do like garlic parm. Lemon pepper, love it. I think I prefer a rub to a sauce with lemon pepper.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
It's a little too intense otherwise.
I'm fine with that.
What do you have for today?
Top pass catching targets for the 4 teams left in the championship round in the National Football League. Travis Kelce, Jamar Chase, A.J. Brown, George Kittle. One's got to go.
That's a great question. I feel like almost by process of elimination, I'm going to end up going with A.J. Brown here. I think, not that he's an easy cover by any means. He's absolutely not. But I think relative to the other 3, he's the easiest cover of the group. Like one-on-one, who would you least want to cover? All right, Travis Kelce moves like a wide receiver, runs like a running back going downhill, and is really good at just getting open. Okay, yeah, you don't want generic cornerback number 33 covering that guy. George Kittle, very similar, not as fast as Travis Kelce, but possibly stronger than Travis Kelce. Is like a rhinoceros with hands. I mean, he is a terrifying guy to try to cover. And we have seen many times over the course of his career, you can't bring him down with one guy. Not a good matchup one-on-one, generally speaking. I think Jamar Chase is better than A.J. Brown. I think A.J. Brown's a really good player. Like, he's probably a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. I think Jamar Chase might be in the neighborhood of top 3 to top 5. So I would take Chase in that pairing as well.
If I took George Kittle out, replaced him with Brandon Ayuk, and said one's got to go,
I would take Ayuk out. And I like Ayuk. I had him on multiple fantasy football teams this year, and late in the season, man, I tell you what, he stepped it up big for the championship winner, Wormhats in one league. But no, he'd be weaker than A.J. Brown.
If I pulled both the tight ends in question, and the 4 were Chase, Brown, Ayuk, and Juju Smith-Schuster.
I would ask, is Ayuk a bigger pass-catching threat than Debo? Or is Debo more in a hybrid role?
Debo's just a Swiss Army knife, isn't he? They got so many of those.
Yeah, so in terms of a pure wide receiver, probably is Ayuk there. In that case, man, that one's tough, and I'm trying to keep the scheme out of it too. Brown would stay, Chase would stay. I would I'd probably take Ayuk out, but you could go either way. I'd be content with either of them. Again, I really like Ayuk's game a lot. I'd probably lean Juju. I like the physicality there. That's something that those other guys don't really offer. So that'd be my tiebreaker. He brings something to the table I don't really think Ayuk has.
Can I give you some breaking news about the guy who throws the footballs to Travis Kelce and Juju Smith-Schuster?
You absolutely can.
Patrick Mahomes, full participant in practice today, according to the Chiefs practice report. They just released their injury report. Everybody practiced today, only McCole Hardman listed as limited. So Patrick Mahomes on the high ankle sprain, a full practice participant. I think I was pretty rosy when I suspected that he would be limited in practice throughout the week.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that he is not, I mean, I know that these things aren't gospel, but you've got to be honest about the participation of your players. You can't mislead the league. You can't mislead your opponent. There are big fines and punishments for saying that a guy who didn't practice was limited, or a guy who was limited was a full participant. So we can assume pretty reliably that Patrick Mahomes did all the drills, did all the things you would expect him to normally do in practice today. Does that impact at all your feeling about Sunday at this point in the week?
I mean, yeah, I feel like it has to. I I'm just not sure because I don't doubt that he practiced in full. Again, he had to because there are severe punishments, and I would imagine there are bigger punishments if you do it in the playoffs than if you do it in the regular season. So, yeah, I mean, I trust that he's participating well. Man, I saw him barely be able to walk and certainly not be able to run in a game less than a week ago. And look, I mean, we know he is a fast healer and has healed from some pretty gnarly looking injuries in the past, specifically thinking about the knee injury in 2019. I mean, it would make me feel a little bit more optimistic about where the Chiefs are, I would say. The Vegas spread has moved again, by the way. It's now just a single point favoring Cincinnati.
Did that move like recently?
That moved today. Yeah, it was 1.5 earlier today.
That was today?
Yeah.
I wonder if that was upon seeing him run around out there a little bit.
Does it change how confident you feel in the Chiefs?
I feel a little better about Mahomes' ability to do some of the Mahomes stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I already feel good about Mahomes as a pocket passer, but there's, all the other extracurricular Mahomes stuff on the move, throwing on the run, getting out of the pocket, scrambling for some yards. I feel a little better that he can grit his teeth and give the Chiefs some of that than feeling like he's going to be like 40-year-old Dan Marino out there.
Dan Marino lost by 56 points in his final game.
He did, man. He went out so sad.
Yeah. That's playing for the Dolphins for you. Hey, one more real quick. One got to go, but it's really an either or. Two guys who would normally be factoring into the offense are still on IR, thus they're not on the participation report at practice. But given the fact that Chris Lamons was waived, you would imagine one of these guys is probably going to be activated this week. Who would you rather have activated? Clyde Edwards-Helaire or Jody Fortson?
Fortson's more of a red zone weapon, and that's something that you can put on papers. Like, this is what he gives you relative to other players on the roster who may not give you that. I don't know what Clyde Edwards-Helaire gives you at this point that the three running backs on the active roster don't.
I'm with you. You can point to, because when you're getting to that part of the roster, I mean, you're looking at guys who you have to be able to do something. You're a special teams ace, you're a red zone weapon, whatever. Fortson's a red zone weapon. The Chiefs really like using him. They like getting him out there in multi-tight end packages. You're right. I mean, what does Clyde give you that McKinnon doesn't give you? Well, nothing right now. What does he give you that Isaiah Pacheco doesn't give you? Well, nothing right now. Him and Ronald Jones, at that point, why upset the apple cart at that point? Just leave it as is. So, no, one of them I think is going to be activated for this week. I'd be surprised if they weren't, again, considering Lamons got waived back on Monday. We've got to take another break. Our Wendy's Male High School Athlete of the Week, Joe Otting from Hayden, is coming up next here on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan and Dan back with you on a 580 Sports Talk on this Wednesday afternoon. It is time for our Wendy's High School Athlete of the Week, brought to you by your Topeka and Northeast Kansas area Wendy's locations. One athlete this week, and he's one of the best all-around athletes in the state of Kansas, and I'm pretty darn confident in saying that. His name is Joe Otting. He is the starting center for Hayden basketball, also a starting guard for the Hayden football team. Oh, and let's just throw into he's a standout thrower for Hayden track and field as well. Joe is an all-tournament member of the 2023 Topeka Invitational Tournament this past weekend. 23 points per game over 3 games at the tournament, including 28 points in the opener and 27 points in round 2, a Hayden win over Shawnee Mission North. Joe is our athlete of the week. He's going on to Notre Dame to play his college football starting next year. We talked to Joe all about that, all about the basketball season he's having, and so much more. So without further ado, let's get to our Wendy's Male High School Athlete of the Week, Joe Otting, a senior for Hayden basketball. Our Wendy's Male High School Athlete of the Week is one of the best all-around athletes, not just in Topeka, but maybe in the entire state. He is Joe Otting, a senior for the Hayden Wildcats basketball team, but also a standout track athlete as well, and one of the best football players in the state of Kansas, who will be heading to Notre Dame to begin his college football career coming up in the fall. But Joe, I do want to start on the hardwood. You played so well in a 5th place finish for Hayden at the Topeka Invitational Tournament this past weekend, scoring 23 points a game, including 28 and 27 each in the first 2 rounds. What was working so well for you at the Topeka Invitational this weekend?
Just getting the ball in my hands again, good touches from my guards, and I was getting fed the ball, and I was just going to work, Yeah.
Your head coach, Dwayne Paul, has told me just recently that he thinks you might be the best big man in the entire state. And obviously you've played now for a couple of different coaches during your time at Hayden. What is it about this system you guys are running right now under Coach Paul that has worked so well for you and has given you so many opportunities to produce these last 2 seasons?
Oh, yeah, it's been great. Coach Paul is a mastermind at work, and he always knows how to utilize the big, and he loves just using me because when I draw attention, I'll just pass it back out and hit my guards, and so it's been well.
Is there any player that you model your game after, NBA, college basketball, old school, whatever it might be? Is there anyone that you've tried to model your game on the hardwood after?
I'd model after Nikola Jokic for sure.
All right, so I'm glad you brought that up because my one of my co-hosts here, he said, "Hey, he looks a lot like Jokic, and he's a big Nuggets fan." So, what is it about Nikola Jokic that really stands out to you that you've tried to replicate or produce your own version of?
Jokic is just a great playmaker, like in the post, and he passes it real well. I think I do the exact same, and he might have a little bit more of a jump shot than me, but just post scoring and all of that. He's just great big, and I'm all myself after him for sure.
We're talking to Joe Otting, a senior from the Hayden Wildcats, our Wendy's Male High School Athlete of the Week, coming off of a 23 points per game performance at the Topeka Invitational Tournament this past weekend. Joe, what were some of the things that you worked on going into this senior year? Obviously, you guys had a great run last year to make it to 4th place in the state tournament in Class 4A. So going into your senior season, what are some of the things you were really focusing in on to try to improve on?
Just improve on my all-around game and just be more of a weapon. And, just kind of just being with my team has been a big part of it, and just building the team up and getting the chemistry going, and hoping we can make a state run again.
Is that something that you guys as a group talk about a lot, that, hey, we made it to state last year, we want to do it again this year? Do you focus a lot on those long-term goals, or have you as an individual and as a team really tried to stay more in the moment with it?
Yeah, we take every game at a time. We don't look ahead, but our goal is always just to win state, and we have to improve every day to reach that goal. And so that's what the season's all about.
Both on a personal level and on a team level, where do you think you guys have improved the most over the course of the season? I know you had a 3-game losing streak a little bit earlier in the year, but 2 wins this past weekend, obviously a lot of basketball left. Where do you feel like you guys have taken the biggest steps so far from the beginning of the season until now?
I'd just say as kind of just team chemistry. Yeah, we have built upon that, and also just on the defensive part of things. First game of the tournament, we kind of struggled defensively versus Wichita Southeast, I think it was. But over the course of the tournament, we sat down and guarded, and it turned out a lot better for our team.
We're talking to our Wendy's Male High School Athlete of the Week, Joe Otting from the Hayden Wildcats, a senior standout for Hayden basketball. But, Joe, I also have to ask you, and obviously, again, so much basketball left to play this season, but you already know where you'll be heading post your Hayden Wildcats career. You are headed to Notre Dame to play on the offensive line for Marcus Freeman. I know you've answered so many questions about your college commitment already, but I do want to ask, what stood out about Notre Dame? I mean, everybody who follows college football knows about the legacy of Notre Dame, but why did that program in particular stick out to you?
Yeah, for me, it's before I started this process, I mean, it was always a dream school of mine. Growing up Catholic, and being at Hayden, wearing the blue and gold, it's just always been something special to me. And when I first got the offer and it finally happened, it was shocking, and I was very excited about it, and knew I couldn't pass something like that up.
So I grew up just outside of Chicago in the Chicago suburbs, and where I grew up, everybody either loves or hates Notre Dame. And when I was a kid, I was a huge fan. That was, Brady Quinn, Jeff Samardzija, the Charlie Weiss coached era. Did you have a certain year or a certain group of Notre Dame guys who you really looked up to when you were younger, or even recently?
Not really. I mean, I haven't been following too close upon it, but I mean, just the past linemen, Quentin Nelson, I always watched, and just those type of guys.
Last thing I've got for you then, Joe, as we look ahead, obviously you've got about a half a basketball season left this year, track season as well, and then you're off to Notre Dame to begin your college football career. What are some of the final things you want to accomplish during your time as a Hayden Wildcat?
I want to win state in basketball, and I want to win state in track and field in my throwing events.
What events are you going to be participating in this year?
Javelin, shot put, and discus.
All right, so if you had to then rank, and I'm going to assume football is at the top here because that's what you're going to be doing in college, but for a football athlete, a thrower on the track circuit, and then a basketball player as well, how would you rank your favorites of those three sports, 1 through 3?
I'd go football, basketball, and then track and field.
Joe Otting is our Wendy's Male High School Athlete of the Week after a phenomenal senior season on the gridiron and a Notre Dame college football future in his future as well. Joe has been in the midst of a tremendous basketball season, including 23 points per game at the TIT this past weekend, and with the track season still to come. Plenty more to accomplish this year, Joe, but we appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule to join us today. Thank you so much, and best of luck to whatever is left for you in your Hayden Wildcats career, and then on to the start of your career at Notre Dame.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
That is Joe Otting, one of the best athletes in the state of Kansas, our Wendy's Male High School Athlete of the Week. Yeah, pretty dang cool to get to go to Notre Dame to play football. That's pretty darn cool.
Yeah, that's the dream of a lot of kids, and he's getting to live that. I like how you referred to me as one of your co-hosts in the interview.
I wasn't really sure. Like, I didn't know what he was going to say, and then I was just kind of acting like my one co-host on the show, but whatever. I apologize. I was wondering what your response to that was going to be.
I'm not really offended. I'm just giving you grief.
I let it out and thought, that didn't really make a whole lot of sense, huh? Should have said my co-host, Dan.
Yeah.
You look a lot. And it's true. You're 100% right on that.
Yeah.
I heard him say that. I thought, oh, yeah. No, Dan was spot on.
It was immediate. I watched him for like 3 possessions. I'm like, wow, this kid's in his Nikola Jokic bag out there. I wonder if that's on purpose. And he's watching my big Serbian son on a nightly basis for the Nuggets.
To be that good at basketball and not even have that be your best sport, pretty darn impressive. Appreciate Joe taking time for us. With that, we've got to take a break before the national and local news. We've got the 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk coming up after this. o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk coming up on this Wednesday afternoon. Brendan Dworzinski and Dan Lucero here with you. I almost said Thursday. I have felt like it's Thursday all week, or all day at least. Like, came in today, I asked Jake, hey, are you guys playing the audio from the coordinators today? And he goes, no, that's tomorrow. Oh my God, it's only Wednesday.
Yeah,
Damn
it's been one of those weeks.
Yeah.
My wife and I were both agreeing yesterday that it felt much later in the week than Tuesday yesterday. So, no, we're right there with you.
Yeah, I said that to my wife yesterday, and she goes, God, I wish it was Thursday or Friday already. And I said, well, yeah, that would be nice if we could jump right ahead. We do have a busy back part of this week here on the Sports Voice of Kansas. Obviously, we've got 580 Sports Talk until 6 o'clock today. Short show tomorrow. We are done at 4 o'clock tomorrow because we are going right into high school basketball coverage of the Thunderbird Classic Girls Basketball Tournament at Shawnee Heights High School. The Birdcage, myself and Larry Latimer will be on the call. We've got a doubleheader for you tomorrow, first round of the tournament. Washburn Rural will be in action as they take on Life Prep Academy out of Wichita. And then in the second game, it'll be the host team, Shawnee Heights. They will take on Wichita South in a battle of two teams, both ranked in the top 10 in their respective classes. Shawnee Heights is number 9 in 5A, Wichita South number 10 in Class 6A. So we should get a couple of really good games coming up tomorrow. Friday, we will coverage as well. We don't know if it'll be one game or two games, and if they'll be at 4 and 7, 5:30 and 7. Don't really know what it will look like, but we will have coverage coming up for you Thursday and Friday. I'll be getting tomorrow at 4 o'clock here on 580 WIBW. This is one of my favorite parts of the sports calendar is the tournament weeks for high school basketball. Oh, it's so much fun. Just talked to Joe Otting last hour, our Wendy's Male High School Athlete of the Week, who was awesome at the TIT, which is obviously such a cool event, and cool to have another tournament in the city this year as well on the girls' side of things, too.
And lots of really good teams there. I mean, both city teams, Washburn Rural and Shawnee Heights girls, both ranked in their respective classes. You've got Shawnee Mission South coming in undefeated. You've got Wichita South coming in, top 10 team in Class 6A. That Life Prep Academy program in Wichita has turned out some really outstanding players in recent years, and that's going to be a really good test for Washburn Rural. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, going to be a high-level girls basketball tournament this weekend in the campus.
And a lot of international flavor as well for that Life Prep team. Multiple girls who are natives of Poland. 2 girls who are from Colombia, a Nigerian native as well. I'm very excited for that.
Yeah.
It'll be fun.
You'll get a workout pronouncing their names properly as well.
Yeah, I feel as though I'm fairly well prepared, at least for a few of them.
For the Polish ones, perhaps?
Yeah, I think I can handle those. I have always... We were talking about this earlier, Jake and I, while we were switching shows at the top of the 3 o'clock hour, talking about athletes who don't tell people how their last name or maybe even their first name is pronounced, and then years after the fact, after they're drafted or whatever, they say, oh yeah, by the way, that's not my name. My name is actually, etc. And I was saying, look, I get it, man. Like I at some point when you've got a name that is commonly mispronounced, you just say, yeah, that's fine. Like, whatever.
So I have never let it slide with my last name because I don't think my last name is hard.
No, I don't think yours is hard either.
But it's Lucero like it's spelled. Like it's not real difficult. But when you run into people that want to, I don't know, make it a hard C, like a CH sound in the middle.
Lucero.
I get Lucero. Sometimes we're Lucero. You'd be surprised how much I get Lucero.
Huge Paolo Banchero fans. I most of the time, given the nature of my last name, people will try to pronounce it, often nowhere close, and say, is that right? Is that close? No, not really. Or waitresses and waiters all the time. Or like people when I'm paying for something at a register, like, how do you say this? Orzinski. Yes, it's not a big deal.
What's the funniest way somebody's mispronounced your last name?
The funniest way. I was just sharing this story the other day. You might have been there when I was talking about this, or maybe I was just telling Jake. My wedding, when we walked into into the reception. So the way it happened, we had the wedding and the reception all in the same room at the Carnegie Building in Lawrence. So we did the wedding. We processed out. Everybody left for 10, 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. We had our coordinator flip the room over. Then it was, all right, everybody come back in, sit down, and then the bridal party will walk in. And they introduce all the bridesmaids and the groomsmen and all that. They walk in. Then my wife and I walk in. And we were introduced as Mr. and Mrs. And they were like missing a syllable. They were missing all the sound from the middle of the name. Like Mr. and Mrs. Not even close. And I knew when it happened that he had gotten it wrong, the DJ. And he talked to us a little bit later on in the early evening. And I said, nah, man, don't worry about it. Like, close enough. One of my best friends, he was in the wedding. His now fiance took video of it happening. She's like, oh, they're going to love watching this back. I'll save it for them. We saw them around Christmas time. She showed it to us. I can't believe this. This is so much worse than I thought it was. He practiced it beforehand. He had it phonetically spelled on a card. No.
He just kind of trailed off. Like he was doing the lyrics to Yellow Ledbetter or something.
Right. Pearl Jam song he didn't know. That's the worst by far. Like, dude, this isn't even close. Not even remotely close.
See, I've always found in my time of doing play-by-play broadcasting, you run into a last name, the harder it looks on its face, sometimes the better, because then you don't have a guess. Like, I would see your last name, and I would say, yeah, that's Azinski at the end. But I don't even, those first 6 letters, I don't know how those are handled. I better find out for sure. And then you find out for sure. But you don't have like a guess stuck in your head. And so you're alternating between the pronunciation you assumed and the proper pronunciation. Emporia State had a basketball player of recent vintage whose last name was Haluchawecki. Yeah. That dude's name looked like you picked just picking random letters out of a Scrabble bag. But it was better to not have any idea how it was pronounced. So you're not guessing and you don't have like an idea of a pronunciation stuck in your head that will trip you up. You go
I'm not even going to try.
Yeah, exactly. It's best to not try.
One final anecdote, because we do have Chiefs-Bengals to get to here in just a second. I have this vivid memory. I think it was my sophomore year of high school. We were playing volleyball, and we go to this gym in our conference, Willowbrook High School, which isn't even in the town of Willowbrook. Anyway, beside the point. So we walk in, and on the wall, like a lot of high schools, they have records, scoring records or track and field records, whatever. Top scorer in school history had some I don't even remember what it was. It looked a little bit like Krzyzewski. And it was on the wall, all-time leading Willowbrook Warriors scorer, Greg, whatever. And one of my teammates goes, Brendan, how do you say that? And I looked and was like, let me try. Whole freaking team stops putting their bags on the sideline, stops putting their shoes on for the game. They're all just watching me try to work it out in my head.
Like it was some sort of
guys.
Like it was a magic trick.
Yeah, okay, we live in the Chicago suburbs. I know other people in this group are also Polish.
Come
all right?
see the amazing Polish name knower.
Come on. Break. Oh my God. All right, let's get to Chiefs and Bengals coming up here this afternoon. I wanted to take a look at some of the prop bets for this game to see. We already know that the Vegas line has jumped the fence, so to speak, after the Chiefs are favored originally. The Bengals are favored now, although it's getting smaller and smaller. It's down to just -1 for the Bengals. But I wanted to look at some of the prop bets to see how Vegas is expecting individuals to perform and maybe some trends they're expecting from the passing and running games for each team. So the first one, simply enough, passing yardage total for this game. Patrick Mahomes' is over-under is 270.5. Joe Burrow barely higher, 276.5. The heavy money, by the way, for the Burrow prop is coming in on over 276. They're expecting the Bengals to have to throw it a lot in this game.
So we also did get the news about half an hour ago that Patrick Mahomes was a full participant in practice today. Between when you screenshotted these and now,
so approximately 2 a.m. and now,
Mahomes' total has gone up 11 yards.
So that's a 281.5 now?
281.5 is now the total for Mahomes.
Okay, no, that is significant to note. Let me pull that up here. 281.5. All right, and that's even money on both sides.
Yes. So the betting markets are reflecting confidence in Mahomes's, or more confidence anyhow, in Mahomes's health status for Sunday.
So before then we get to these props specifically, would you expect this to flip the other way? That the Chiefs are going to be favored maybe by kickoff on Sunday?
It wouldn't surprise me. if the line jumps back the other direction. It's only happened 9 times in the last 20 years that in a playoff game that a team has been favored when the line opens and then not favored when the line closes. It's only happened like 9 times in the last 20 years. That has been the case. It's only happened once since 2015. Oddly, the last 3 times it happened in Seahawks games where the Seahawks opened as favorites and then closed as underdogs.
They just never play normal games.
No, they sure don't. So it is rare that happens. And if Mahomes is a full participant all week in practice, I could very easily see this being closing at Chiefs -1. If it's already moved half a point today and it continues to be positive developments for Mahomes, you're kind of taking it day to day with him right now.
Yeah.
In terms of, okay, he was a full participant today. We'll see how it responds. He said so himself when he talked to the media earlier today. Have to see how it responds today to doing all the drills, see how it responds to continued treatment. If he's a full participant again tomorrow, if he's a full participant again on Friday, I think that could continue to shift the line and make the Chiefs potentially small favorites by the time the game kicks off.
I understand the increased confidence in him. I'm a little bit surprised, though, his number is higher than Burrow's. I think right now the Bengals are harder to throw on than the Chiefs are. And there are other factors here, obviously. I think the Chiefs, in terms of just raw talent, are probably better up front. I like the Bengals front four a lot. Trey Hendrickson, good player, although he obviously has the hand in a cast. DJ Reader's a nice player up the middle. Sam Hubbard, he got a rest day today. He will probably be all fine to go for the game coming up on Sunday. I'm a little surprised, even with that additional confidence, Mahomes' number is higher than Burrow's.
Yeah, that it jumped the way that it did in, 12, 16 hours.
11 points is a lot, or 11 yards, I should say, is a lot for a prop to move with that one, increased confidence. Yes, but that seems like a big jump. Would you take the over or the under for both of those guys?
I would probably take the under for Burrow because I do think that they showed last week and they showed in the first meeting this year against the Chiefs that they can run the ball for decent chunks.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't be surprised if Burrow's number lands closer to the 250, 260 range. And the other thing that I think is worth noting is the last game that these two teams played, the Chiefs only had 8 possessions.
Yeah.
And the Bengals have been 9 total possessions in the game. So not a lot of possessions, not a lot of opportunities to gain yards. So I'd probably be inclined to go under for both quarterbacks, honestly.
I am kind of leaning low numbers for everybody in this game. Like looking at the total of 47.5, I know it went to 51 the first time these two teams played. I'm expecting a lower scoring game, I think. The Bengals defense is playing really well. I am expecting a lower possession kind of game. Mahomes being a full participant is great. I would still be especially cautious about that, at least from a picking games or picking sides of the betting line perspective. I would argue for under both of those numbers. 281's a lot for a playoff game against a good defense. I would say under for both Mahomes and Burrow in that regard. But that also does bring up the point about rushing yards over at, and these numbers are from FanDuel, by the way. Joe Mixon, his prop is 58.5 rushing yards. Samaje Perine is 17.5. Now, remember, we talked about this earlier in the week. The last time these two teams faced off earlier in the season, Mixon was out with a concussion, and Samaje Perine ran for over a quarter of his season's yardage total just against the Chiefs. Granted, he only ran for 394 yards all year, but still, 27% of those yards came in the game against the Chiefs. Pacheco, for what it's worth, on the Chiefs side, his over-under prop is just 50.5 yards. Again, I'm not necessarily prisoner of the moment, but maybe I'm overreacting or overcompensating for what we saw in that first matchup this year. But I feel like that number for Mixon's kind of low.
I do too. And particularly as well as we saw the Cincinnati front play against the Bills, who have a solid defense. The way they were able to run the ball at will. Now, part of the reason was they got ahead. And so the game script, if you will, flipped towards a run first and run heavy philosophy in that second half. But yeah, the way that Cincinnati ran it on the Chiefs in the first meeting and the way that Jacksonville ran it on the Chiefs on Saturday, yeah, I think there are going to be some rushing yards to be had for Cincinnati. And I would suspect Mixon would have most of them. Though, as you mentioned yesterday, Perine is out there a lot. because he's the better blocking back.
Mm-hmm.
And so as such can be used in some, third and medium draw play type situations or second and long running play situations to maybe make a mockery of that total for him.
Well, and that's why the Chiefs' ability to get ahead early in this game is going to be significant, and not just from the betting perspective, but from the perspective of Joe Mixon is a more dangerous player for their offense. If the Bengals have to play from behind and are going to go 4 wide, even 3 receivers, 1 tight end, 11 personnel out of the gun constantly, you're going to probably see a lot more. And they like to run, especially 11 personnel a lot in general, with Hayden Hurst as the tight end. And they certainly go 4 wide a lot with Trent Irwin in there in the slot instead of a tight end. But you're going to see more Samaje Perine, and you're going to see a much more one-dimensional team. I don't think Cincinnati needs to run the ball a lot to find a lot of success, but it certainly wouldn't hurt. And you certainly want to be ahead later in the game so that you can use Mixon, run down the clock, give fewer opportunities to a maybe healthier than we thought Patrick Mahomes. So I think those are interesting numbers. I lean, but I'd go over on Mixon. I don't know about Pacheco. I would have no idea what to do with that number at 50.5.
A text from the Big O Tires text line from the 785 asks if Mixon is better than Jacksonville's running back, Travis Etienne. I would say yes.
Probably overall, yeah.
I'd say more of a threat than Etienne, yeah.
He's a more powerful runner, I think. I'm sort of curious what Etienne is going to become in the NFL, like as his career really develops. A lot of people thought, what if you just moved him to slot receiver and just had him be a big, a bulky but shorter slot receiver? He's a really good receiving back. I would take, if you're just trying to run some sort of dive play, I'd probably pick Joe Mixon for that as opposed to Etienne. Etienne's got more burst, but I think Mixon probably in general is the better all-around running back at this point.
Etienne, by the way, finished 10 carries, 62 yards in the divisional round.
Yeah.
And they got behind and had to throw it in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, exactly.
So he probably would have had more carries if not for that.
Man, I just want to know what the scheme is going to look. Well, not the scheme, but what the plan is going to be to compensate for what went horribly wrong last time trying to slow down Samaje Perine. Additionally, along with those, anything else stand out to you in terms of props that either feel like a best bet or feel like, why is this number where it is?
So Travis Kelce, 77.5 is his total for receiving yards as it currently stands. Obviously coming off a 90-plus last week against the Jaguars, the team that was the worst in the NFL at defending tight ends. I think Cincinnati was best, according to DVOA. They were in the top 5, because I know the matchup, Cincinnati and Buffalo, one of those teams was tops in the league, one of those teams was 5th. And unfortunately, I can't remember which is which. But you're going either way from facing a team who can't cover tight ends to facing a team who is pretty exceptional against tight ends. And Kelce did not have a catch in the first half of the first meeting against Cincinnati. I think Kelce has an impact in this one. I mean, no way he doesn't. He's Travis Kelce, for God's sake. But 77.5 is a big number against a team like Cincinnati, who has defended tight ends really well this year, and will be scheming to try and take him away.
That is the one matchup that I think, do you trust that if the Bengals focus a majority of their attention in their defensive backfield on Travis Kelce? I imagine we're going to see a lot of Jesse Bates on Travis Kelce. That feels like it's going to be the primary matchup from Cincinnati. Most physical player in their secondary, best overall player in their secondary. And God forbid you don't want like Eli Apple matched up on him, because he would have 14 catches for 200 yards and the game would be over by halftime. Do you trust MVS, Juju Smith-Schuster, Kadarius Toney, who I'll get to here in a moment? Do you trust that those guys can win more one-on-one matchups and Mahomes can get the ball to them before pressure breaks down the offensive line? I would think the answer is yes. I think they've earned that benefit of the doubt.
Do you remember the play? It was on what ended up being the game-winning drive for Kansas City, the touchdown drive in the fourth quarter. That sideline ball to Juju Smith-Schuster, that back shoulder ball, where Juju went up and he made the catch against one-on-one coverage. Why can't we see more of that? Like, I think that could be a very valuable weapon in the passing game if the Bengals play man coverage on the outside. We have no idea what Lou Anarumo is going to do.
No.
Another reason why this matchup is so fascinating. obviously it was well known what they did in the second half of last year's AFC Championship game to slow the Chiefs down, the drop 8 in coverage. I think they only did that 5 times total in the regular season meeting, and Mahomes didn't really fare well against it in that game. He was 1 of 4 passing against it. But are we going to see more of that, or are we going to see the Bengals try and play it straight up on the outside and then be tougher on Kelsey between the hashes? Because if they play one-on-ones on the outside, yes, MVS can beat those, and Juju can beat those. And those might actually be throws that are beneficial for Mahomes if he is, in fact, compromised in terms of his mobility. A short drop and a throw to the outside shoulder to get Juju 7, 8, 10 yards up the field. Like, those could be solid chunk plays for the Chiefs throughout Sunday afternoon if those are available. I don't think we saw that throw a ton during the regular season, but I feel like Juju's pretty good on those.
I think so. He is a better wide receiver than I know I gave him credit for going into this year. And I don't just mean better player. I mean, as a wide receiver, I think he is a more gifted player than maybe he got credit for coming into this season. The other one that stood out to me, by the way, Kadarius Toney's over-under for receiving yards is 35.5. I think that is a fascinating number because if it goes over, that more than likely means he probably had like 1 catch for 60 yards. Like, I don't know that he's going to get the ball a ton in this matchup. If he does, okay, great. But that to me feels like, is he going to have a big explosive play to set up or to score a touchdown? That's what that number says to me. If it goes over, to be honest with you, this seems like overkill maybe for one particular guy. That goes over, that to me would indicate things are cooking for the Chiefs offense. They were able to get him involved one way or another. It's been a pretty good sign for the Chiefs so far when they've been able to get him involved in games this season. We've got to get to a break here on 580 Sports Talk, but when we come back, we've got What Is Wrong With You coming up on 580 WIBW. Brendan and Dan with you on 580 Sports Talk. Our current winner for this week in What Is Wrong With You is the gentleman who pooped in a sink at a community center, stole a computer, and then attached his own Apple login credentials to said computer.
I feel like getting the order of operations right is vital. He stole the things and then left his mark in the sink on the way out, but also left behind like his personal information in terms of connecting to that computer. And the police were able to identify him very easily as a result.
Just so extremely stupid. 2 news stories today. Dan, I'll have you go first.
We are going to Florida, Disney Springs, Florida, to be precise.
Formerly downtown Disney for you Disney adults out there.
Are you familiar with the Speedway chain of convenience stores?
I am. Well, the convenience stores of Speedway. Yeah.
Very Midwestern and Southern. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The Disney Springs Speedway had more than $2,000 stolen overnight when an overnight employee was apparently tricked by a fraudster posing as a company leader into putting money from the store's safe into a Bitcoin ATM where the money was stolen. This story goes back to October of last year, where a store employee named Eric was working the overnight shift when he got a call at 3 a.m. from somebody claiming to be his boss's boss. The person on the phone sounds urgent. There was a FedEx rush delivery and an upcoming fire marshal inspection. And Eric, 30, I put his age in here, man. That kind of feels like dirty pool.
Brutal.
Like, old enough to know better, you'd think. Wrote down invoice numbers and tracking numbers on a note that law enforcement found later. The voice also instructed Eric to send a picture of the fire extinguisher to make sure it was still valid, then asked for pictures of the safe and all the money in the safe, which Eric sent. Then the voice on the phone wanted money. Again, this was all an emergency for the Speedway company. Eric first attempted to use his own credit card to pay towards a Mexican bank account. Like, dude, so many red flags. Eric's transactions were unable to be processed because his bank canceled his request. Another red flag. The suspect then tells Eric he needs to leave the store and go towards the nearest Bit Stop. Eric takes the money from the safe and leaves the Speedway unattended. The suspect said he would have local law enforcement monitor the store while he was away. Coincidentally, an Orange County deputy sheriff walked into the store as Eric was leaving and remained on a check at the store from 3:58 a.m. till 5:30 a.m. Abandoning the store, Eric drove to a mobile gas station, which had a Bitcoin ATM, and deposited more than $2,000 of the store's money. It was too late to get the money back when Eric realized the caller on the phone wasn't a Speedway supervisor and law enforcement had been notified. The store still hasn't gotten the money back. The actual manager hasn't been updated on the investigation since the incident was reported. I don't know what happened that night, said the manager. It was not believable at all. Eric, who'd been working at the gas station for less than 3 weeks, is no longer employed there.
You're kidding. You are kidding. This dude's dumber than rocks. I can't even. No one on earth except drug dealers and criminals are operating at 3 a.m. making important calls to your business.
Right.
No one. Not your boss's boss. Is that how he introduced himself?
I have no idea how he introduced himself.
Hello, I am Mr. Smith. I am your boss's boss.
But like, yes, please deposit this money into this bank account. It is Mexican. Please do not ask any questions about why that might be the case.
This dude has melted jelly beans for brains. This is unbelievable. Put it
in a Bitcoin ATM so it's safe.
That is the opposite. No. If I knew anything about anything, I'd be like, what if I took this real money and turned it into fake money?
As soon as I hear the word Bitcoin, I'm assuming you're trying to scam me. There's no bigger scam in the world than the funny money. So I just, there's so many red flags, and poor Eric, just 3 weeks into the job, thinking he's doing his boss a solid. And I just hope he found other gainful employment that doesn't involve him being in charge of anybody's money.
Come on, man. Come on. My story is also in Florida, the town of Longwood, where a man is accused of intentionally setting his own apartment on fire. And he also shot himself with a gun in the process of doing all of this. Why did this all happen? He was mad at his HOA.
Yeah.
53-year-old Mark Herman was arrested and booked into Seminole County Jail Monday on 4 arson charges. He appeared in court via video Tuesday, lying down on his side after he had to be treated for some injuries. Back on January 14th, officials say a fire broke out at an apartment community located in the town of Longwood. You can see in images obtained by Fox 35 News places where smoke was coming out of the condominium with smoke rising through the roof. Certainly not good. Law enforcement officers and fire and rescue personnel responded to the area and found Herman sitting on the ground draped in towels with blood all over his face and hand. The deputy asked about his injuries, and Herman said the blood had been caused by a gun. The deputy said Herman then continued to talk about his management company, saying they were responsible for what happened. According to an affidavit, Herman told the paramedic who was treating him he started the fire in an act of revenge against the homeowners association in charge of his property. He then shot himself in the neck after starting the fire. Days before, a judge had denied Herman's request to reverse a foreclosure on his home where he had lived for 25 years. This is a dispute that had been going on for over 5 years. It began in 2017, and the HOA reportedly was owed thousands of dollars in unpaid fees from Mr. Herman. Eventually, they filed a lien and decided to foreclose on his property in order to pay off the money owed. A judge allowed his home to be auctioned off for $82K, even though Herman claimed he did pay off his HOA fees. A judge denied Herman's request to not auction off the home earlier on this month. By the way, at least three other apartments were impacted by the fire.
Look, on the one hand, fight the power. On the other hand, maybe don't light your own place on fire. Like, that's not how you solve problems. And you definitely don't solve problems by shooting yourself in the neck.
Yeah, that part of it, I wasn't exactly sure of the intent. Obviously, it could have gotten to a very dark place. I don't know for certain. Don't light your house on fire, especially when your house is also attached to dozens of other houses that could be impacted by this.
Yeah, that's not going to solve your problem, man.
You know what you could do? Pay the HOA fee?
You could, but
it's just a theory.
I have some thoughts on HOA.
Well, I do as well. I have spent many times on Zillow thinking, oh, this would be a nice place to live. Oh, HOA, never mind. Not nice anymore. I understand. But also, you kind of know what you're getting into at that point.
Yeah.
This does not win, though. The gas station guy is such a moron. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
I think that wins the week.
Really?
He is so unspeakably stupid. That gets my pick for the week.
All right. Sure.
You on with that one, too?
Speedway stupidity. Yeah, we'll go with that.
Oh, yeah. Turn this into fake money for me and then send it to a Mexican bank account. Ludicrously stupid. That is our new winner in What Is Wrong With You. We've got to take a break. Tim Fitzgerald joins us next here on 580 Sports Talk. always a big victory when we get to talk to Tim Fitzgerald, publisher of GoPowerCat.com. You can find him on Twitter at Life of Fitz. And, of course, you can find his work and all of his crew's phenomenal work covering K-State athletics at GoPowerCat.com. Fitz, we're thinking about you, my friend. How you holding up today?
I'm good. Been kind of chilling today. Trying to do as little as possible. Watched a really nice movie on Paramount Plus, and now I get to talk to you. This day's really going well.
Hey, love to hear that. What movie did you watch today?
Devotion, post-World War II military movie. It was out in 2022, and now it's streaming on Paramount Plus, and it was outstanding.
Awesome. Glad to hear that. Good recommendation for us and for you movie lovers out there. Last night, not quite as enjoyable, Fitz. I'm not super concerned for K-State long-term after that loss last night. I mean, it's the Big 12. You're going to lose games like that sometimes. They fall 80-76 to Iowa State on the road, hostile environment, all of that. Anything major stand out to you? Any major takeaways from that one last night?
Yeah. How about this? The fact that the big men had 0 rebounds, which I didn't think was possible, that 3 guys playing that are 6'9" or taller could go an entire game without a single rebound. But they accomplished it, and it's, it's a huge accomplishment. I mean, I don't think I've ever heard of it before. They also didn't defend well. Keontae Johnson continues to dribble into traps and kind of get himself too deep into the defense sometimes. They took some bad shots. They played in front of a really hostile environment, didn't play very consistently, didn't defend particularly well, and it was a really, really good Iowa State team, and then lost by 4. And I say all that because K-State didn't even come close to playing its A game. I'm not even sure it played a C-plus game. Yeah, sure, they did some really good things to be in the game, but they left so much on the table, it's shocking. And Iowa State's really good, and they lost by 4 on Iowa State's home floor. I don't know what to read out of that. I hope nothing here is going to be an ongoing problem. I think it's very abundantly clear they've got to get a healthy David Gasson back on the floor to help with the post presence, rebounding and defending, and even scoring. But this team's just got something to it that even when they play bad, they're hanging around, and that's a sign of a pretty good team.
Jerome Tang mentioned the turnover issue after the game, and in a vacuum, K-State didn't turn the ball over that many times. 14 is not a great number, but it's certainly not an awful number either. It was only 1 more turnover than Iowa State had, but the points off turnovers, that was, to me, the biggest stat of the game, along with the rebounds. I mean, K-State gave up 25 points on 14 turnovers to Iowa State. Meanwhile, K-State picked up just 13 points on 13 ISU turnovers. And again, Tang mentioned that they know that's something that they need to work on after the game during his post-game press conference. Where's the concern level with that? Is this just a matter of, hey, look, that's a good defensive team, it's Big 12 play, whatever, you move on? Or does that feel like it maybe is a little bit of a bigger issue for this group?
It seems to be an ongoing issue. And I think what happens here is you've got a group of guys that are trying to attack the basket, which you need to, but there might be taking too many chances in it. And honestly, maybe the coaching staff needs to set up more opportunities to kind of design things where if they want to double on Keontae, make sure it's someone sitting in the corner that's going to torture him with the 3. Put the defense into more bad situations, because right now it's just kind of like, give me the ball, I'm going to go attack the basket, and we're seeing some turnovers off that, particularly with help side reaching in, and really honestly they're not getting many calls off that either, but maybe they're all clean steals, and that's great defense, but they've got to sort that out. They absolutely have to sort that out. And Marquise Noel's upside is everything we've seen. It's amazing. The guy can shoot, he can create, but also he tends to get a little bit overzealous at times, maybe too deep of a 3-pointer when he didn't need to take it, or kind of get in there too deep into the defense without a really good plan of where to go. So they just got to settle in and understand themselves a little bit better, who they are and what their strengths are and what needs to be on the table for them to try to attack the basket.
We're talking with Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com for our Azura Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up. We do it every Wednesday at this time here on 580 Sports Talk. Fitz, of course, the publisher of GoPowerCat.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network, and you can find him on Twitter at Life of Fitz. Let's talk about a couple of the positives from an individual perspective from last night. Cam Carter came out and had a really nice first half, probably as good a game as he's played in Big 12 play so far. He kind of gets overlooked a little bit as the fourth or fifth option whenever he's out on the court, but he's just a sophomore. There's a lot of room to grow. Was that a big step forward for him last night?
Yeah, I really liked the way he attacked the basket. Now, later in the game, he had a really bad decision where he attacked the basket, I think 1-on-4, and got a charge called when even I could have taken the charge. The guy stood there for like a week and Cam tried to run him over. So it's all a learning process. Again, you mentioned he's just a sophomore, and really a sophomore seeing his first significant playing time in college basketball. So he's still got a lot of things to learn, but he's been a pretty steady influence on this team and ability to hit some outside shots. He was really good early, helped them stay in the game until some other guys picked it up. But that's what I like about this team is they can have off nights from their big guys, and other guys can step in. They have scorers that are capable, like Desi Sills, that could come in and put it in. Ish Massoud put up some points. Now, I'd like to go back and look at the game because I think Ish gave up 2 points for every one he scored because the defense was pretty dreadful. But they got some guys that can fill it up, and that's really encouraging. It's going to keep you in a lot of games.
Speaking of Ish Massoud, or Big 12-ish, as his teammates have taken to calling him, what is the biggest difference for him between this year and last year, when there were times he'd show some flashes, but a lot more times where it just kind of seemed he was getting some cardio in out there?
Yeah, not even hard cardio at times, to be blunt. He's much more confident with his shot, and I think that's from the coaches really drilling it into him that he needs to be better. He needs to be more consistent with that shot, and he's getting there. He's pretty darn dangerous, I'll tell you that. And for a while there, he showed some defense and some rebounding, but that went away last night in Ames. He's got to be consistent with the defense and rebounding, and once he figures that out, Ish Massoud can be as good a basketball player as he wants to be, but he has to learn to be a complete player. Sean Tank says it. This is some platoon football. You don't put the offense in and then the defense goes in. You have to play both. And Ish has problems playing the complete game. And it was something we saw last year. It's gotten Ish into trouble at times this year. He's proven to be so good offensively, they're willing to forgive some things. But I think after they go back and watch the film of last night, they're going to realize, boy, we can't have him defending the post this way because he just got torn up by a really talented post player.
Florida comes to town on Saturday night, 5 p.m. tip-off in the Big 12 SEC Challenge. And obviously, it's a bit of an irresistible storyline as Keontae Johnson faces his former school. They may not say it out loud, but how personal is this one for Keontae and, by extension, his teammates?
Real quick, Fitz, before you answer that, are you telling me Keontae Johnson played for Florida? Rich Hollenberg did not say that every 30 seconds last night. I can't believe that. I am floored to know
New information to you.
Look, I respect the announcers, but those guys stunk last night. They were so bad.
Yeah, Chris, I'm good if I never have to listen to Chris Spatola do color commentary again.
Down by 3 with negative time on the clock. Don't need a 3 here. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
I'm from the Steve Lapis school.
Oh my gosh, it was painful. It was painful. Yeah, look, I don't know how important it is. It's a different coaching staff. The uniforms will be familiar. There'll be a few teammates, I imagine, but that was 2 years ago. So, it's going to be very interesting. I imagine Keontae will be fired up for this game. I imagine Florida won't want to get torched by him. But there's also a lot of water under the bridge for both the program and the young man. But it's going to be kind of weird. It's pretty amazing when you stop to think that this game was scheduled long before Keontae Johnson was part of this program and how it worked out. It's pretty cool. And on top of that, his former assistant coach that got him to Florida came in. What was it, Marist, that he's the head coach at now? And that game was on the schedule before all of this went down. So it's pretty amazing that how this is all lined up, and he's kind of having homecoming tour of coaches and schools. But it's a big game. The Big 12 needs to really mop up in this thing to prove their strength and then get back to beating the snot out of each other.
Just a couple more questions for Tim Fitzgerald from GoPowerCat.com. He joins us every Wednesday, bottom of the 4 o'clock hour for the Azura Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up. Go find all of Fitz's work and his crew's work over at GoPowerCat.com, and you can find him on Twitter, too, at Life of Fitz. Fitz, next time we talk to you will be one day after the next Sunflower Showdown, KU versus K-State. KU will really need a win in that one, and K-State will obviously want to get back to its winning ways in Big 12 play as well. How jacked up are you for 6 days from now when the two schools meet in Lawrence?
Why are these games so close together?
I don't know, man. I'm still reeling from the last one.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of throws a shadow over everything. And look, I agree with Jerome Tang. This can't be your Super Bowl. This can't be everything. But this is the rivalry. And you can't tell me that KU isn't going to be jacked up for this game after losing to K-State. But I mean, if you're KU, you're like, this team's been really good. Now it's in a slump, and you're telling me we have to play our rival within a 2-week period, basically, while we're in that slump. It just doesn't make sense to me. But it's going to be a great game, and this conference is all about matchups. TCU can't handle West Virginia apparently, but it's just a horrible matchup for Kansas and Kansas State. And Iowa State's out there giving people trouble. Now Baylor's surging. Guys, I don't even know what to say about this conference anymore. Thank goodness Oklahoma and West Virginia are kind of floating towards the bottom, and there might be some free wins out there, but it's dreadful trying to survive in this conference. You just got to put those losses behind you, learn from them, and move on, and that's what K-State's got to do, and that's what Kansas has to do. It's a good Kansas team. But I think we all agree they kind of lack some of the weaponry they've had in the past, and it's beginning to show up.
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt about that. And to the point about this meat grinder of a conference, Fitz, we'll get you out of here on this one. There are 6 teams right now, all within one game of first place at the top of the league. KU and K-State are both up there. TCU, Iowa State, Texas, Baylor. They are all within one game of each other at the top of the league standings. Do you think all 6 of them have a legitimate chance to win the league?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're not even the halfway mark. I mean, it's absolutely. There's so much basketball to be played, and the ebbs and flows will change. KU might get red hot. K-State might fall into a slump. Baylor's getting hot. TCU might realize that they're really good and then lose to West Virginia again. It's amazing. I'm stumped. This conference has stumped me. I don't even understand how these coaches do it. And God bless them. God bless them.
It is a true battle every single time these teams in this conference take the floor. It'll be fun on Saturday as K-State takes on Florida, and the next Tuesday as well for the Sunflower Showdown. To talk all about it, the best of the best, Tim Fitzgerald joins us here on 580 Sports Talk for the Azura Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up. Go check out GoPowerCat.com. You will not find a better coverage of K-State anywhere else. Fitz, as always, man, we appreciate the time, appreciate you, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, boys.
That is Tim Fitzgerald from GoPowerCat.com. Always thinking of Fitz and keeping him in our best thoughts as he goes through his cancer battle. There's a piece up right now, by the way, over at GoPowerCat about the latest on Fitz. If you want to check him out and think some good thoughts for our good friend as well. We've got to take a break here at the top of the hour. Coming up in the 5 o'clock hour, we've got some Royals to get to. Got some good college basketball bets for you today. At least I think they are. Plus, we've got our 580 Sports Talk headlines all coming up on 580 Sports Talk. 1 hour to go on 580 Sports Talk on this Wednesday afternoon. I'm Brendan. Oh, Jesus. I'm Brendan Dworzinski. He is Dan Lucero. I had a snack between hours. It's 5 o'clock, fading a little bit. Had to get something to eat. And apparently I should have rinsed my mouth out or something.
Brendan Jesus, huh?
Jeez. It's one of those days.
What'd you do? Screw up like the Beatles and say you were bigger than Jesus? All the time was the title of our second album.
That is Dan Lucero, though. I am regrettably Brendan Dworzinski. Appreciate you joining us for the duration of the show today. If you have missed any of the show up until this point, you can head over to our website, 580wibw.com. Hover over the podcast tab and then click on 580 Sports Talk to find the hour-by-hour breakdown of the show. If you want to go back and listen to anything from Mic'd Up today, you can also do that. Same place, podcast tab, hover over it. There's a link to both 580 Sports Talk and Mic'd Up. Very interesting discussion the guys had earlier on today with Will Carroll, known on Twitter as @InjuryExpert, runs a blog about athletes' injuries, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Some insight into what the high ankle sprain means for Patrick Mahomes, how to treat it, how to manage the pain. Some really interesting stuff. So if you missed any of that, you can head over to 580wibw.com.
Unfortunately, I did not get Jake to ask why he has blocked me on Twitter. I have no idea why Will Carroll has blocked me on Twitter, particularly because I got to know Will when I was in college in Indiana. He's based out of Indianapolis. Actually, met him a couple of times, exchanged emails. I had a baseball prospectus membership for almost 2 decades, thanks to him, that I never had to pay for. And then I come to find, hey, Will Carroll, I wonder what he's been saying on Twitter. I'm blocked by the injury expert. And I can't figure out for the life of me why that would be the case.
Is that this is a good random question Tuesday question. Is that your most mysterious block? Or is it still Tim Tebow?
No, I earned the Tebow block. Even if I never tweeted at Tim Tebow, the things I said about him were definitely deserving of being blocked on Twitter by Tim Tebow. Yeah, Will Carroll's definitely my most mysterious Twitter block. I don't get that one at all.
There's a gentleman who writes about prep sports for the Dallas Morning News who has me blocked.
Huh.
What in the world would have happened for that guy to block me on Twitter? What could I have possibly said to have offended the preps writer for the Dallas Morning News? I don't know. Maybe he really loved that Mike McCarthy got hired. I don't know. No way to explain that one.
By the way, just checked. I am still blocked by Tim Tebow and have not received amnesty for that one yet.
Do you still have the placard from when you sat down at Washburn where Gene Castle had Dan Lucero blocked by Tim Tebow on Twitter?
So everybody, it was an ESPN 3 game. I think Emporia State was in town for a doubleheader, so we all had name placards at our seats up in the Crow's Nest at Lee Arena, and Gene made special ones for Jake and I. That was when I was working with Jake on the Washburn broadcast, and Jake said Washburn all-time record holder for being tackled at the 1-yard line. And mine said blocked on Twitter by Tim Tebow. And yes, I still have that.
Those are both very funny.
A prized possession.
I think regularly about the time, I don't remember what we were talking about specifically, but Pistol out of the blue said, "Hey, I got stopped short of the 1-yard line, just like you used to all the time, Jake." It was one of the funniest roasts in the history of this radio station.
I think Pistol had that in it.
It was incredible. Jake was hit him like a train. All-time funny roast. We'll see Pistol coming up tomorrow at the Birdcage at Shawnee Heights for the Thunderbird Classic. Coming up this hour on 580 Sports Talk, of course, your takes, your comments, your thoughts are welcome on the Big O Tires text line. 785-272-9429 is the text line number. You can also find us on YouTube. Sports on 580 WIBW is the YouTube channel. We are live streaming the show. Go subscribe if you haven't yet. It is the best way to know exactly when we are going live and to see all of our post-game recaps, live shows, especially after they go final, high school interviews, all the good stuff, Washburn recaps as well over at our YouTube channel, Sports on 580 WIBW. Appreciate all you guys who have subscribed so far. This hour, along with your takes, we've got our headlines. We'll get to some Royals fill in the blank. I think some interesting lineup questions. Dan came up with this earlier. I think there are a lot of fascinating decisions and pieces that can be moved in different places for the Royals starting lineup. And I've got a couple college basketball bets I'm going to be following tonight in case you are looking for something to watch later on this evening. But with that, it's time to get to our 580 Sports Talk headlines brought to you by Blue Dot of Kansas. Go visit our good friends online at bluedotkansas.com. Headline number one for me today, it is the Chiefs injury report. There are count them, just 4 players listed on the Chiefs injury report for this week. McCole Hardman, limited. Willie Gay Jr., a full participant with a toe injury. Jerick McKinnon, a full participant with an ankle injury. And the most important one of all, folks, Patrick Mahomes with an ankle injury, listed as a full participant. He was able to do practice in its entirety at full speed earlier on today. That is impossibly good news for the Chiefs. The Vegas line for the game has already moved back in favor of the Chiefs by 0.5 point from this morning because of a little more confidence that Mahomes will be able to go, following the trend that, Dan, you were prognosticating yesterday on the show that, hey, if he's able to go all week in any capacity, spread's probably going to move back toward the Chiefs. We have already seen that today.
It has even gone to a pick 'em in some places.
That is significant. That is extremely significant.
It is still Bengals -1 from our friends at FanDuel, but I believe at the Caesar Sportsbook in Vegas, it has gone to a pick 'em.
That somebody put a lot of money on that today and said, oh, yeah, he's good to go. Put it all on the Chiefs, which I get. I really do understand that. On the Bengals side of the injury report, they had 3 DNPs today. Alex Kappa, starting guard, dealing with an ankle injury. That's a big one if he's not able to go, and he's been banged up. DJ Reader, defensive tackle, rest day for him. He's fine. And then offensive lineman Jonah Williams with that dislocated kneecap. For what it's worth, and I'm not a doctor, I'm not the injury expert, I don't think Jonah Williams is going to play because dislocated kneecap sounds horrific, and it wasn't all that long ago he suffered that injury.
It was in the wild card round.
Yeah, it was not even 2 full weeks ago at this point. I have a hard time seeing a gigantic offensive lineman being able to play at any sort of respectable level dealing with a recovering dislocated kneecap.
And as well as Jackson Carman played in his stead in Buffalo on Sunday, I'd be surprised if they rushed Williams back too.
I do not trust Jackson Carman as far as I can throw him. And he's a large man, and I don't think I could throw him very far. Not a fan of him coming out of Clemson. Don't think he played all that well last year as a rookie. That feels like the weakest link on the line if I was the Chiefs. Like, if you end up with your tackles as Hakeem Adeniji on one side and Jackson Carman on the other, love Hakeem Adeniji, what he did at KU. There's a reason he was the swing tackle this year, not a starter at guard like he was last year. I think Jackson Carman is that weakest spot. Like, get me playoff Lawrence Taylor, a.k.a. Frank Clark, on the perimeter and get him on Jackson Carman. When Chris Jones lining up on the edge, like they like to do in some pass rush situations, put him on Jackson Carman.
Yeah, Jones is going to have, if Kappa and Williams don't go, Chris Jones is going to have a good matchup a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. 3 limited listings for the Bengals today as well. Joe Bocci, I pronounced his name improperly for like 3 years. I believe it's Bocci. He is a linebacker with a foot injury. He was limited. Trey Flowers, cornerback, he was limited. And Sam Hubbard, starting defensive end, he was limited, but he was getting a rest today. So just a walkthrough for Sam Hubbard. He should be fine to go for Sunday. There's your Chiefs and Bengals injury report for today. Great news on the Chiefs front.
First headline for me, shifting gears to the NFC Championship game. We mentioned it as part of our Blue Dot of Kansas headlines yesterday that San Francisco 49ers defensive lineman Charles Omenihu was arrested on Monday on suspicion of misdemeanor domestic violence. Following that arrest, Omenihu will remain with the team and continue to prepare for Sunday's game. Coach Kyle Shanahan said the Niners spent the past couple of days looking into what happened with Omenihu and concluded that the best way of handling it is to let the legal process play out before making further decisions. Shanahan's quote, "We feel very good letting the legal process take care of itself and don't feel we should kick him off our team at this time." The NFL said in a statement Wednesday, the matter will be reviewed under the league's personal conduct policy, and there is no change to his status. Omenihu is dealing with an oblique injury, but did practice on a limited basis today. So Shanahan adding, if he is healthy, he will play this week. And he's had a good playoffs. He had 2 sacks in the wild card game against the Seahawks, but it sounds like the 49ers are trying to wash their hands of this as best as they can. And I guess wash hands is not right. Maybe it's more appropriate to say they're trying to sweep it away and hope that it doesn't look bad in retrospect on them.
I don't know, man. I heard what the allegation is, and I don't mean to, take away any of the importance of this. I mean, it's not like the allegations against Mike Clevenger, like something that awful, but you put your hands on a woman just in general, you commit any act of domestic violence, it is obviously a problem. And again, allegedly, I understand. But it's sort of a flippant response by the 49ers, I think. Like, I don't know, maybe a little more aggressive than I thought they would be with it. That's kind of Kyle Shanahan's style, though, when he's talking to reporters. He's always kind of abrasive. I figured they would just leave it as we're letting the process play out and things are up in the air for Sunday, and then it just happens as it happens. I'm a little surprised they came out as strongly in regard to that. Also, did you see Jimmy G is officially not going to be able to go this weekend?
Yeah, I was just about to round the corner into the injury update. Yeah, no Jimmy Garoppolo for the 49ers on Sunday. The other injuries of note, the Eagles have their injury report out. Only 2 players are listed. Lane Johnson, starting right tackle, and Avonte Maddox at cornerback. Both were limited with injuries. For the 49ers, they haven't released their practice report yet, but both of their starting running backs, Christian McCaffrey and Elijah Mitchell, were not expected to practice today. Deebo Samuel was also not expected to practice, but he was seen in uniform going through drills at the portion of practice that was open to the media. So Deebo probably limited today.
He's obviously incredibly important to get out there. I figure he will likely be able to go. To the point about Garoppolo, I mean, you can't, even if he was good to go for a Super Bowl, even if the Niners win and he can say, yes, by Super Bowl Sunday, February 12th, I would be healthy enough to play. You can't play him, right?
No.
There's no way.
No, Purdy's your guy. Purdy's your guy this week. He's your guy Super Bowl Sunday if you get there, and he's your guy in 2023.
Man, that is going to be fascinating what they end up doing. I mean, well, maybe it won't be because they'll probably say, hey, they're both cheap. Purdy is insanely cheap. We'll just keep them both, and one will be the backup. But that's an interesting situation with Trey Lance and Brock Purdy out there in San Francisco. No one thought Brock Purdy would be this good in the NFL. No one.
No.
And I know that's a quarterback-friendly system, probably the most quarterback-friendly system in the league. He's looked good when he's been asked to do things on his own.
And I think Shanahan has more confidence in him than he ever did in Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen throws from Purdy we never saw from Jimmy G.
Yeah.
And look, I talked a lot of trash on Brock Purdy when he was at Iowa State.
Hand up, me too.
But I'm going to be honest with you. I'm loving that he's finding a lot of success in the NFL because now we can focus all of our energy into Matt Campbell's overrated and held him back. Could they have won the COVID year national championship if Matt Campbell was not their head coach?
Who's to say?
I'm just asking questions people want to know. I am just asking questions.
Putting it out there.
Next headline for me on our 580 Sports Talk headlines brought to you by Blue Dot of Kansas. Let's go to a little world of sports business here about the sports media business in particular. Don't know if you saw this earlier today. The issues for Sinclair Television and the Bally's Sports regional networks getting in even more hot water here recently. According to reporting from Bloomberg, among other outlets today. Here's the headline for you. Sinclair's sports channels prepare bankruptcy, putting team payments at risk. That second part of the sentence is the most important one. So to not get into all the business stuff and the stock stuff and who would, creditors and all of that, essentially Sinclair, which owns Bally Sports and its parent company, Diamond Productions, they are hemorrhaging money. Ever since they bought the regional networks, formerly the Fox Sports channels, bought all of those, they have been losing a massive amount of money because their TV negotiating deals stink. You end up with a ton of people who can't watch, don't care, and have decided, well, we're not going to pay for your $20 a month product. That's a ridiculous price. Absolutely not. We're not going to pay for that. Tim Fitzgerald, who we talked to last hour, he was tweeting about this earlier today. He hasn't watched a Royals game, he said, in 2 years. He said, they're losing a lifelong fan because I can't do it. I can't watch them. I can't watch them legally at home with YouTube TV. Anyone who's got YouTube TV or several, Dish is another example, can't watch the Royals or any other team that's on Bally Sports.
I think Fubo and maybe DirecTV Stream are the only two major streamers who have carriage agreements with the Sinclair networks. I know that YouTube TV, which I think is the largest streamer, does not. Hulu
does
Live
not.
Television also doesn't carry those channels as well. So yeah, it's a missed opportunity for a lot of viewers, and they don't really give you a lot of reason to tune in if they are not carrying the local game, the local teams, like they don't have like ESPN. If it's not a game, you still turn on to watch, their personalities. You can still turn it on to watch, Get Up if you're into that, or First Take if you're into that, or the NFL Live, the studio shows, all those things. Bally has those, but they are far from must-see television. They're just, people don't watch those channels unless it's to watch the local team.
They have, if I remember correctly, one national daily sports talk show on Bally. The Rally, I believe, is what it's called.
Yes.
And then they air like obscure tennis and the World Poker Tour. Like, that's it.
A lot of poker, a lot of tennis. This year, I have noticed a lot of West Coast Conference basketball.
Interesting.
Which is fascinating. I've also...
so for you degenerate gamblers out there.
Yeah. Pepperdine San Diego was on a couple of weeks ago. I checked that out for a little bit.
Yeah, the folks' alma mater.
Yes. My dad's alma mater, the Roll Waves. Some ACC stuff you see on there every now and again, like ACC stuff that doesn't make it on the ACC network.
Miami football was on Bally, I think, twice this year.
Yeah,
That's
were
hilarious.
They were. No, yeah, it's a bad time for those networks. They're losing money hand over fist, and people can't watch them. And it's hurting the teams who are on those networks.
Yes,
that they are less available to people in their home markets, particularly in baseball's case, because there's not Bally has a streaming model, but it's a little pricey and
crazy pricey.
People really aren't biting.
ESPN Plus, and you can get, you talk about all the streaming bundles. I think we pay for Hulu, Disney Plus, and ESPN Plus. It's like $15 a month. Bally's going to be $20 to potentially watch a crappy baseball team. Hard sell.
Yeah, and then what else are you giving me other than the ball games? Like,
oh, sick! I can watch an occasional Timberwolves game for some reason.
I'm already paying $20-$25 a month for MLB TV to watch the other 29 teams, like the other 14 games on a given night. I got to pay $20 more to watch the home team.
So with all this in mind, and with the value of that deal cratering, more people cutting the cords, more people just saying, okay, fine, we're just not going to watch the teams on these networks. Diamond Productions, or the Sinclair Broadcast Group, they are losing tons of money. They're going to have to enter bankruptcy. If all of this goes through the way they are planning, and again, this is from Bloomberg, essentially all the companies that invested in the Diamond Broadcast Group to put all these on the regional networks, they're going to become the owners of the company, and then they're just going to sell it all off again for nothing, for dirt cheap amounts. This is going to affect the viewer. That's going to affect us as fans, because it might be another channel or another carriage agreement battle or whatever. Maybe even fewer people, maybe more people will be able to watch in the future. That's probably still a couple years down the line. Where this could impact, though, is the teams. The Royals get a massive amount of revenue every year through their agreement with Bally Sports Kansas City.
Every team gets a lot of money from their TV deal.
The Arizona Diamondbacks have a $1.5 billion deal, which is wild. That is an absurd amount of money for that area. $1.5 billion. You can't make that payment if you, hey, we can make a third of that this year, but we can't pay interest and we can't pay the full thing. Suddenly the Diamondbacks are, what do we do? Like, how are we going to make this work when we were expecting 3 times as much money?
I have to pay Madison Bumgarner. Where is that money coming from? Yeah,
come on, Sinclair. Let's go. It's a very fascinating situation. I know there's a lot of different angles to this. I know there's a lot of different, iffy parts of this and stuff that is over my head from a business sense, but this could end up very severely, again, impacting us, because fans are always the ones who suffer with this nonsense. And 2, it very well could negatively impact teams, and teams like, the Cubs, who have the Marquee Network, or the Yankees with Yes, or the Dodgers and their weirdo agreement, like teams that have their own networks like that, NESN in Boston, the MASN channels in the on the Beltway, they would be fine with this. But teams like the Royals, guess who ends up taking the brunt end of this disaster? Teams like that. Not good.
Nope, not good at all. And again, the people who lose here are the fans who just want to turn on their television and watch their favorite team play baseball. And if it's not possible to do that, I mean, there are some people who will go the extra mile. Like,
there are websites.
Yes, like my dad has been extra legally streaming Denver Nuggets games for now 3 years because the television network that carries the Nuggets and the Avalanche only has an agreement with one of the 3 major cable and satellite carriers and none of the major streamers.
It's ludicrous.
So my dad will do that. My dad will sit with his tablet and he'll go to a website and he will find a video of the Nuggets game, and probably on a 1-minute delay that freezes 5 or 6 times a game, but he will watch it. He will do that. He is that committed to watching Denver Nuggets basketball. I realize that not everybody is that committed. Would my dad be that committed to watching the Nuggets if they weren't a title contender in the Western Conference? If they were just a 32-50 basketball team? Probably not. And that's where a lot of Royals fans find themselves. It's like, I would like to spend the summer watching Royals baseball, but I'm not going to go out of my way to do it if they stink. And so it's a double-edged sword, and it does. It hurts the fan, and it keeps young fans from being able to access the games. You know, it's not something that a father can do with his son or a mother can do with her daughter and have the Royals be a presence in the home for the course of those 162 game days in the summer. And you don't make fans that way. And
no,
it's really disheartening that people don't seem to really care this is a way that you make fans for life, and you're losing these opportunities.
So at this point, it's smart for MLB to say, hey, we want to buy these rights back, because they're also trying to do that. And we'll see where it goes. But again, if it becomes even more difficult to watch the Royals in the next 2 or 3 years, now you know why.
One last headline for me in the Blue Dot of Kansas headlines. We have not had the occasion of late to talk much about the ongoing golf soap opera between the PGA Tour and Live Golf. Recently, Live Golf finally came to a television agreement. They will be televised on the CW.
Sure they will.
Yes. CW affiliates, by the way, can choose whether or not they want to air, Henrik Stenson and the lads getting rowdy on a course in Saudi Arabia, tape delayed 14 hours on a Sunday afternoon in the middle of the summer. We'll see how many of them do that. We'll see how many people watch. If you are familiar with the CW, it's a lot of like Marvel comic book shows and you got Smallville, you got the All-American family of shows, teen and tween dramas, and now the Bonesaw Journalist Murdering Golf Tour. So congratulations to Live Golf for not being on YouTube anymore and being on television instead. Very good, very savvy business move. I'm sure this will work out great. Anyhow,
here, by the way, real quick, here is what is on primetime Saturday night on the CW this week. At 7:00 Central Time, Chris Angel's Magic with the Stars, followed by a full hour of World's Funniest Animals.
Well, maybe those aren't doing ratings now, but can you imagine the lead-in being Bryson DeChambeau getting crazy at some golf course in Oklahoma or West Virginia, the American events, the course at West Virginia, they're playing a Live Tour event that this year is called literally the Old White Course, which feels a little on the nose. Anyhow,
irony is dead.
Anyhow, there are still events out there in which PGA Tour professionals and Live Golf professionals may encounter each other. And one such event is going on right now at Dubai, the Dubai Desert Classic. A lot of golfers like to go out and play in Dubai. It's a big purse. It's a, pretty long running event as these things go out in the Middle East. Anyway, Rory McIlroy, who's become something of the spokesman for the PGA Tour, the face of the PGA Tour, is playing in this event. So is everybody's good pal, Patrick Reed, who is infamously a Live Golf member. Apparently, Patrick Reed thought he'd go over to Rory McIlroy and say hi on the driving range the other day. Rory didn't want anything to do with Patrick Reed, so Patrick Reed threw a tee at him. Now the two golfers have...
oh, my God.
Yes. Now the two...
It's like a bit from Caddyshack.
Yes. The two golfers have told their side of the story. McIlroy saying, Patrick came up to say hello, and I didn't really want him to. He said, apparently he threw a tee at me and didn't really notice it happen, didn't get hit by the tee, and then added, if roles were reversed and I'd have thrown a tee at him, I'd be expecting him to file a lawsuit, which is a great line because Patrick Reed is suing a lot of people right now. And one of the people deposed in Patrick Reed's many, many lawsuits is Rory McIlroy. And when did McIlroy get served Christmas Eve. So it's no wonder that Patrick Reed is not exactly high on Rory McIlroy's list of favorite people right now. For Reed's part, he said he saw me and he decided not to react. It's unfortunate because we've always had a good relationship, but it's one of those things. If you're going to act like an immature little child, then you might as well be treated like one.
Destroyed him. That's awesome. I love Patrick Reed because it is amazing how that one person has made every single one of his counterparts hate him. Every single one of them. They dislike Patrick Reed. It's awesome.
It's not just the people competing with him. This goes back years. He was originally at the University of Georgia on their golf team. Everybody hated him. So he transferred to Augusta State, accused of cheating by his own teammates, led Augusta State to 2 national championships, including beating Georgia one year for the championship, in which somebody, when seeing that result, famously said, "Karma is dead." That's how people have felt about Patrick Reed since his college days. His reputation is no better. There are still accusations of cheating that follow him around. His wife defends him from those allegations using a very obvious Twitter burner that everybody in the world knows is his wife. He doesn't talk to his own parents anymore. Like, this is not a guy who is good pals with anybody on the tour. So the fact that he thought he was just going to go over to Rory McIlroy
and be buds
and say, "Hey, man, how's life? How you been? Anything interesting happen around the Christmas holiday? How was your holiday?" Yeah, like
getting deliveries on Christmas Eve by chance.
He's lucky Rory didn't throw some at him. I'm trying
like a fist.
If you serve me with papers on Christmas Eve, if you have me served on Christmas Eve, I would wrap my 5-iron around your throat.
I love it. What a great villain.
That is one thing for the Live Golf Tour. They do have all the black hats. They do have all the bad guys.
Man, that's awesome. That rules. So
all
much.
The jerks, all the words that are synonymous with jerk that I can't say. All those guys are on the Live Tour. I'm sure it'll do great TV numbers on the CW, though.
Along with the new Cincinnati Chili Bowl, which is also committed to the CW network. That'll do it for our 580 Sports Talk headlines, brought to you by Blue Dot of Kansas. We've got to take a time out. We'll play a little Royals mix and match and fill in the blank coming up next here on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan and Dan here with you on 580 Sports Talk on this Wednesday afternoon. 5:36 on 580 Sports Talk to be exact. The Kansas City Royals report to spring training in under a month. That's right. The 20th of February, I believe, is when the full roster reports to spring training. There are still plenty of options out there for what the Royals are actually going to do in terms of their starting lineup, 1 through 9. Pitching wise, we'll have plenty of time to get to that later on in the winter and into the spring, what that'll look like. But Dan, we're going to do a little fill in the blank here because there's a few spots that are obviously booked at this point. Like Salvi is going to be catching, and when he gets a day off or is going to DH, MJ Melendez is going to go back there and catch. But there are a lot of open spaces, specifically in the outfield, specifically at third base. You know, Bobby Witt Jr. is going to be playing probably short, but
a lot of short, according to JJ Piccolo from yesterday. That's the idea, that he'll play as much short as possible.
Which we thought maybe he would get moved to a bigger role at third base, because you could, in theory, do Witt at third, Lopez at second, Lopez at short, Massey at second. That's one option.
Michael Garcia could be your shortstop.
Garcia. So what would you say for the positions that are right now the most disputed? So your 3 outfield spots, certainly now with Michael A. Taylor gone, plus third base. How do you see the Royals lining up, given what we have seen over the course of this offseason in terms of acquisitions and given who we know is back from last year?
So I think if it were me, if I were Matt Quatrero, and right now I were so excited like a kid at Christmas getting to write out my first big league starting lineup for opening day, and I was imagining what that might look like with the talent on hand right now for the Kansas City Royals, my opening day outfield would have Edward Olivares, Kyle Isbell, and Drew Waters. And positionally, the only thing you can't do is put Eddie O in center.
Yeah.
He'd be my left fielder. I'd put him in left.
Okay.
I like Waters in right with his arm, and I like Isbell in center. I think he's got the best glove of the 3. Good athlete, gets some good jumps. I think that's a pretty solid. I don't love Olivares' glove, but
that's why I stash him in left.
Yeah, put him in left, and then, Nate Eaton can be a defensive replacement if I really need one. I think Nate Eaton's going to make the 26. But I give Isbell and Waters those other 2. Now, Isbell didn't hit last year. He had every opportunity. He got 278 plate appearances, played in 106 games. He just didn't hit a lick. 211 average, 603 OPS. Just didn't hit enough. But he's only 25. I want to give him one more chance. I'm going to give him one more extended look to see if he could put something together at the plate, because his debut in a small sample size in 2021 showed a little promise. And I think he can get to some more power. When I watch him hit, he can backspin the ball. And what I mean by that is he can hit a fly ball that carries. Like I think he has some power potential that could make him intriguing. And I think between that and the glove, I don't think he's a net negative, even if the bat never quite comes around. He's got to hit better than he did last year.
Yeah.
But I think that's possible. So I give Isbell another crack, and I put him in center field. Drew Waters was really impressive in his 32-game cameo at the end.
Yeah, you were on him very early on.
The only thing that gives me pause is the 40 strikeouts and 109 plate appearances. That's not what you want.
It's not great.
It's not awesome to strike out more than a third of the time that you stand at home plate.
In fact, almost 40% of the time.
But if you also have 12 extra base hits and 12 walks in those 109 plate appearances, then you can still be a productive offensive player. And like I said, I think his glove, his athleticism, I mean, the fact that he's a switch hitter, you can play him every day. I'm excited about Drew Waters, even if he's never going to be a high average guy because he might not make enough contact. There's real power there. There's some speed. There's a glove. I think that's a player. And then Olivares has done nothing but hit when he's been healthy. He just hasn't been healthy often enough. Only got 53 games last year, but still OPS well above the league average, 743 while he was out there. And so I think that's my best mix of offense and defense in the outfield, left to right. That's how I'd write it out.
Who would you put at third?
You're making me talk about Hunter Dozier, aren't you?
Okay. You brought him up first. I think there's some logic to that because your big log jam is like first baseman and DHs, right? Like You want Prado to get at bats.
Mhm.
You obviously want Pasquantino to get at bats.
MJ Melendez has to get at bats.
MJ Melendez has to get at bats.
I didn't include Melendez in my outfield picture, and even though he played quite a bit of outfield last year, I don't think that's a natural spot for him. Now, maybe he gets better to the point where he can really hack it in left field or right field because he is a good athlete.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I think right is where he played predominantly when he was in the outfield last year.
And you need his bat in the lineup because he's one of your better hitters. For me, I would either DH him or I DH Olivares and play Melendez in left field.
Okay. No, I think that's entirely fair because you just have so many guys. Like, I don't remember anything notable about Prado in the outfield. I know he has done it in the past.
Yeah, there's athleticism there. Like,
yeah,
the ability, like he'd be better out there than Ryan O'Hearn was.
Well, certainly.
It doesn't take much doing.
No.
But,
so I think you need to get flexible here, and that's why, like, look, Hunter Dozier's going to be around unless you trade him in the next month, which I guess is possible.
Sure.
It's been rumored out there that the Royals are still actively looking to make things happen with this roster. Andy Rogers wrote about that the other day and put it on Twitter. As long as you have Dozier and without a clear-cut, obvious, right now, better answer at third, I feel like he makes a lot of sense at third base. I would not be opposed to seeing Garcia there, though. And again, if Nicky Lopez is around, we had that rumor yesterday that the White Sox are sniffing around on him. If Lopez is around, he can be your super utility guy, or you could, in theory, start him at one of the middle. I know they want Witt to be a shortstop. I get that, but you've got that option of Lopez there, and I still think it makes sense to move Witt, but if they don't want to do that, you probably go with the veteran who at least his production's never going to be all that good, but at least you know what you're getting, and there are going to be a lot of spots in this lineup come next year, at least at the start of the year, where you probably don't exactly know what you're getting. Like, what is Isbell going to be? Olivares has hit. He's hit a lot, but has never had great, consistent playing time. What is Waters going to look like since he was only up briefly last year playing a regular role with this team? The other young guys, they're young. They're still going to be streaky in all likelihood, unless they're all Hall of Fame caliber batters. So I think it might make sense to go with the somewhat known commodity at third. So I don't like it, but it might be the best option.
Regarding Prado, I think there's a compelling argument to maybe start him at AAA. I don't think you want to turn him into a guy. I think it's between.
I can see that
because Vinny's going to make the squad. Vinny's not playing for a job. He's going to be your first baseman on opening day. I'm pretty certain. And so I wouldn't want to make Nick Prado a 3 days a week guy in the major leagues, particularly because he didn't quite look like a finished product in his 49 big league games. A lot of strikeouts, 66 strikeouts, 182 plate appearances. That's too many. That's too many. Even with the power, that's still too many. So there's still some work that can be done, and I think he would benefit from doing some of that work at the AAA level. And I think the logjam is such with Perez entrenched behind the plate, and I mean, you're not getting rid of Salvi.
No,
he's untouchable. Prado might be a guy who ends up a trade chip at some point, and I'm a little surprised that the Royals didn't maybe think about moving him this offseason to in kind of a prospect challenge trade type of deal. Like, hey, we got a glut of these guys. You have a glut of guys at a different position that we need some help at. Maybe we can find a fit here. Maybe there's something like that down the road. Here's my wild card name at third base.
Yeah.
The Royals love a reunion. What about a veteran looking for a team? Hasn't really hit the last couple of years, but he's
that sounds like the Royals. All right.
Beloved in Kansas City. He'd be a good clubhouse guy. He'd be another left-handed bat in a team that could use another lefty bat. Do I hear moves?
Honest to God, if they had not made the change at general manager and guy in charge of baseball operations, I would think there would be some legitimacy to that. I just get the feeling from the moves the Royals have made the last couple of days and the way that, they've added some veteran pitchers, but it's like 1 year guys who aren't going to be around very long. They're trying to build around this core. That feels like an old Royals move where I feel, and maybe I'm being way too optimistic, I feel like they're trending in a different direction that's away from let's just bring back old guys to try to sell some tickets. Which, I mean, frankly, might work, but.
Well, I think Royals fans, if asked, who would you like to see 250 at bats from at third base this next season? Hunter Dozier or Mike Moustakas? I think they'd take the guy who's got a ring.
Let's at least take the guy who we know, who we like. That's probably fair. Sorry, Hunter. I mean, that's tough on Hunter Dozier, but if you ran a Gallup poll for his
Look,
His
anytime,
popularity right now, I don't think it'd be very high.
look, trust us. Anytime we bring up Hunter Dozier, check the Big O Tires text line. Check the YouTube comments. They're not complimentary.
No, not very nice. It's kind of fun for the Royals, though, right? Like, we're not going into the year like we did last year. Like, oh my God, this is the group they're running out there.
Yeah, like we knew
Ugh.
exactly what it was going to look like, and we knew it was going to be bad.
No,
Yeah.
it'll be kind of fun, I think, for Quatrero the first few weeks, first month of the season to kind of mix and match and see what works.
Yeah, like a lot of these young guys showed a little spark last year. Certainly Pasquantino and Melendez and Witt got the headlines, but like Michael Massey showed some intrigue, and Drew Waters had a really impressive late season cameo, and Michael Garcia's on the rise. And so there are some young guys who are going to be scrapping for playing time, scrapping for opportunity, and that will make the spring training box scores a bit of an interesting read in a way maybe they weren't last year.
We need to take a quick break. I've got a college basketball best bet for you coming up next here on 580 Sports Talk. No KU or K-State men's basketball on today, although we do have K-State women's basketball coming up. Pregame coverage at the top of the hour, tip at 6:30 here on the Sports Voice of Kansas, 580 WIBW. One Big 12 game going on tonight, and it is the bottom of the conference going head-to-head. West Virginia at Texas Tech. 6 o'clock tip-off for that one, so right at the top of the hour. Those teams are a combined 1-13 in Big 12 play. Oof.
Somebody's got to win.
West Virginia was ranked going into conference play this year.
Yeah, they were.
They were 24th when they took on K-State.
Number 20 in the Ken Palm, too, at that time.
It has not gone well.
Conference play has been a tough pill to swallow.
Been a little tough for the Mountaineers. Did want to give you this, though. I made a couple of bets myself for college basketball tonight. One of the games I picked today is actually going on right now. It was a 5:30 Central Time tip, 6:30 Eastern. That's a weird tip time for a men's game. UConn and Xavier. I had Xavier plus 6.5. That line shrunk near the tip off, so I was happy about that one.
They're up 11 right now.
20-19 right now. UConn, man, they have hit the skids since they got to number 2 in the country. They were 14-0 and have now fallen all the way to 19th in the country. They are sliding. Other game I got an interest on tonight, and if you want to bet it as well and we lose, well, you can blame me because I'm also riding this one. Houston minus 9.5 against UCF. It was 10 earlier today. It's down to 9.5. You mentioned to me earlier that UCF's top scorer is out today.
I believe that is correct.
And I like Houston in a bounce back spot here. I know it's on the road. I know UCF is solid. They're not great, but they're solid. Houston lost by a single point to Temple on Sunday. Temple, not exactly a basketball powerhouse this year. So I'm going to take Houston in a bounce back spot minus 9.5.
I like Texas Tech minus 4.5 at home tonight. West Virginia is not a good 3-point shooting team, and that's what Texas Tech makes you do, is take a lot of threes. And West Virginia going on the road, Texas Tech desperation spot at home. They can't go to 0-8 in this league, can they?
I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, I like Texas Tech to cover the 4.5 tonight.
That is really the extent of the intrigue, I think, in the college basketball slate today. There's some real gross games on tonight. Like, would you be interested in watching Georgia at Tennessee? No, I have no interest. That's like the next best game on the schedule. Wisconsin, Maryland. There you go. Over under for that game is 124.5. Under. Give me the under. That game is going to end 50-49, and it's going to be hideous. I loved Big Ten basketball growing up. I really did. I still have a soft spot for it because I was just telling my wife the other day, I hate more teams in the Big Ten than in any other conference. Growing up, being a fan of Illinois, I hated Michigan growing up, hated Ohio State. I didn't like Michigan State. I didn't really like Penn State all that much. I didn't like Nebraska when they joined that league. But I can't watch their games. The level of basketball is so much lower on a night in, night out basis than the Big 12.
It really is. It really is stark.
I think it's been passed, the Big 10 has, by the SEC too. I think the SEC is the second best basketball league now.
Yeah, the SEC ended up with
a turd this year.
It ended up with so much money from football that they're like, hey, what if we spent this on some of our other sports? And now it's getting really good as a men's basketball league. No, you're right.
Alabama, perfect example of that. The best example of that, in fact. Yeah, and those are the two best leagues, I think, in America by far, because Big Ten, and the ACC stinks this year. It is a bad, bad conference this year. Duke lost last night or was it Monday night, to Virginia Tech?
Yeah.
Ugh.
Who had lost like 9 in a row.
Yeah, not pretty right now. We've got to take one more break. We'll wrap up 580 Sports Talk with the final word after this. for the final word on this Wednesday edition of 580 Sports Talk. We need a quick one. Dan.
Final word for me, no reason to panic about that loss for K-State last night, but it is a frustrating one because if one of four different things maybe goes differently, K-State probably would have walked out of there with a win, but they weren't going 17-1 in the league, and they got a chance to bounce back at home against a Florida team they should beat on Saturday.
With Patrick Mahomes practicing in full, I think the concerns about the Chiefs trend back to this team has really struggled to win games against the Bengals in recent memory, and not, oh my God, our all-world quarterback might be playing on a bum ankle for the duration of a game against a really hot defense. That in and of itself, extremely encouraging for the Chiefs going forward into the AFC Championship game this weekend. Coming up tomorrow, we have a shortened edition of the show. We will be on for just an hour from 3 until 4. And at 4 o'clock tomorrow, we're going to send it to the Birdcage. Myself and Larry Latimer will be on the call of the Thunderbird Classic. Washburn Rural and Shawnee Heights, both in action, doubleheader action coming up tomorrow. So we will join you for a shortened edition of the program on Thursday. And until then, 3 o'clock tomorrow. For Dan Lucero, I'm Brendan Dworzinski. You've been listening to 580 Sports Talk.